My sister sabotaged my dream job, destroyed my reputation, and tried to ruin my wedding with my fiancé on her side. So I took back everything. My name is Harry, and I'm 31 years old. I got engaged to my fiancée Lily 6 months ago. We'd been together for 5 years, and I thought we'd begun the best chapter of our lives. The wedding was scheduled for next month. But recent events have shown me how wrong I was about everything. You'll need some context to understand how we got here. My younger sister Jazzy is 28 years old. I haven't spoken to her in over 9 years, and there are valid reasons for this. Jazzy and I didn't get along growing up. Our parents tried to force us into an ideal sibling relationship, but all we did was fight. Jazzy was fiercely competitive, constantly striving to outperform me in every way. I can still remember the event that set the tone for everything. I was 10, and Jazzy was 7. I had recently won a spelling bee at school, and our parents had taken us out for ice cream to celebrate. Jazzy, instead of being happy for me, had a complete tantrum right there at the ice cream shop. She cried that it wasn't fair, and that she spells better than I do. She requested that our parents question her right then and there, making the entire scenario terribly awkward and embarrassing. That was only the beginning. Her behavior became more sinister as we got older. If I got an A on an exam, she would study incessantly until she got an A as well. When I was 12, I won a local art competition, and my parents took us out to supper to celebrate. Instead of being pleased for me, Jazzy had a fit in the restaurant, yelling that she could draw better. She insisted on showing everyone her sketches right then and there, turning what should have been a happy occasion into a scene. That's only one example. This behavior shaped our childhood. If I joined the basketball team, she became completely obsessed with basketball. When I expressed interest in a lady in high school, Jazzy would go out of her way to be her best friend or gently flirt with her. It was frustrating. My home, which was supposed to be a haven, felt more like a perpetual competition. Our parents made every effort to help us find common ground. They even enrolled Jazzy in family therapy when she was 13 and I was 16, but she refused to participate. She'd sit there with her arms crossed, rarely saying anything, as the therapist attempted desperately to coax her out. The therapist eventually told my parents that they couldn't do much else, until Jazzy agreed to cooperate. Things reached a breaking point when we were both in our early 20s. I had recently graduated from college and landed my dream job at a top marketing business. It was the type of position for which I had worked so hard. Great income, excellent benefits, and the opportunity to work on campaigns that could change the industry. I felt as if my years of hard work had finally paid off. Meanwhile, Jazzy was still in college and struggling to find her feet. She had changed majors at least 4 times and was on the verge of academic probation, struggling to meet deadlines and follow directions. When I announced my job offer at a family meal, I expected at least a polite congratulations. Instead, Jazzy erupted. Her face contorted with wrath, and she began ranting at me, accusing me of being a show-off who constantly stole the spotlight. "Why do you always have to be the golden child?" she asked. "Why can't you just fail once so that someone else has a chance?" The words stung, but what truly shocked me was the expression in her eyes, a toxic mix of rage, envy, and bitterness. My parents attempted to intervene, assuring her that she had plenty of time to figure things out, and that my accomplishment did not lessen her own abilities. But Jazzy wouldn't have it. She stormed out of the room, slamming the door so violently that a picture tumbled from the wall. Later that night, I overheard her talking on the phone with one of her friends. She was saying stuff like, "He's not going to keep rubbing this in my face, and I'll make sure he gets knocked down a peg or two." I dismissed it as her normal dramatic venting. After all, we'd had our fair share of sibling squabbles over the years, and I assumed this was just another of her tantrums. But I could not have been more mistaken. A few days before starting my new job, I received an email from the firm's HR department. They had done an unexpected check of my background due to certain alarming materials that had come to their knowledge. Apparently, someone sent them faked emails and screenshots from false social media profiles, all in my name. These documents used harsh and discriminatory language portraying me as absolutely unsuited for the post. HR informed me that they were rescinding my offer, which left me astonished and devastated. The job I had worked so hard to get was gone in an instant. It did not take me long to fit the pieces together. Jazzy was the only person who understood enough about me to create such intimate and hurtful things. When I approached her, she initially seemed to be innocent, dismissing my claims with a cold smile. But as I pressed more, her facade crumbled. "Maybe you deserve to know what it feels like for once," she eventually whispered, her voice quivering with rage. You've always been the favorite, the one everyone admires. It's about time you got a taste of failure. Her comments rendered me dumbfounded. My own sister had intentionally wrecked my future out of jealousy and hate. It wasn't simply a betrayal, it was a declaration of war. But she eventually broke down and admitted everything. She'd created the bogus accounts, fabricated the emails, and ruined my reputation, all because she wanted me to fail at something. Her voice was full of twisted pride, as if she had finally won some bizarre competition. I was crushed. This was beyond sibling rivalry. This was a premeditated sabotage by my own flesh and blood. I told her I never wanted to see or communicate with her again, and I walked out of the house that day. I crashed on a friend's couch while I tried to piece together my life. In the years that followed, I lost contact with Jazzy. My parents still saw her occasionally, but they knew better than to raise her around me. It was difficult for me to rebuild my career. I had to start with a lower-paying job and work my way back up, but I eventually got there. Now I have a wonderful job, helpful friends, and, until recently, Lily. When I met Lily 5 years ago, it felt like everything had finally clicked into place. She was nice, witty, and understanding. On our 4th date, I told her all about Jazzy. She listened and sympathized, acknowledging that family connections may be hard, and respecting my decision to cut links. I made one thing clear. Jazzy was not going to be a part of my life, especially at my wedding. At first, Lily appeared to comprehend. However, as we moved more into the wedding planning process, things began to shift. She continued bringing up Jazzy, implying that it might be time to forgive and forget. Each time I shut her down. The prospect of seeing Jazzy again made my stomach turn. This was meant to be the happiest day of my life, but having Jazzy there turned it into a nightmare. Lily would change the subject for a bit, but I could see she was unhappy. It all came to a climax last week as we finalized the guest list. Lily mentioned Jazzy again, and this time she refused to back down. I recall the precise moment when things began to disintegrate. We were seated in the living room, with the guest list spread out on the coffee table between us. I was already fatigued from a long day at work, and the last thing I wanted to do was revisit the same dispute we'd been having for weeks. But Lily was certain. Harry, I really think you should reconsider inviting Jazzy, she added softly, as if to ease me into it. She's your sister. Don't you think it's time to forgive and move on? I clenched my jaw. She'd said those words before, but they hit me more this time. Perhaps it was the way she looked at me, with eyes full of hope and worry. Perhaps it was the fatigue I felt from repeatedly shutting her down. Regardless, the remarks landed differently that night. Lily, we've talked about this. It's not happening. Having her there will ruin everything. You know what she did to me? Lily sighed, her frustration scarcely concealed. But it was years ago. People change. Maybe she's different now. Maybe she regrets it. I could feel the typical wrath rising. Regrets it. She destroyed my childhood, my career, my reputation. She knew exactly what she was doing. How do you just regret something like that? Her eyes scanned mine for any sign of compromise. I'm not saying what she did was okay. I just think maybe she deserves a chance to make it right. I looked at her in bewilderment. Why are you pushing this? Why does she deserve a chance to be at our wedding? Lily's face hardened. Because family is important, Harry. I can't imagine cutting someone off forever. The remarks stung worse than they should have. Family? You think this is about some petty grudge? She didn't steal my toys or read my diary. She sabotaged my entire life. I had to rebuild everything from scratch because of her. She shook her head, her tone becoming sharper. You're being stubborn. You're punishing her for a mistake she made when she was young. That did it. I snapped. A mistake? Do you know how humiliating it was to lose that job? To have my name dragged through the mud because my sister couldn't stand that I was doing well? That's not a mistake, Lily. That's cruelty. She crossed her arms and turned away. Maybe she's grown. Maybe she wants to apologize. And maybe I don't care, I responded. She made her choices, and I made mine. I told you this was a boundary for me. If you can't respect that, then maybe we shouldn't be getting married. Lily's eyes widened with shock. I could see the hurt on her face, like a shadow. You're seriously saying that over this? She blurted out. I responded, yes. Because it's not just this. It's about trust. You're supposed to be on my side, Lily. You knew how much this meant to me, and you're still trying to push me. We sat in silence, the weight of my words lingering in the air. My heart was beating, each pulse a stinging reminder of how far we'd strayed from the happy pair we were just months earlier. Lily spoke softly. I thought you'd understand. I thought love meant forgiveness. I shook my head, making my words barely audible. Love also means respect. And I can't respect someone who won't respect my boundaries. She said nothing after that. She simply sat there, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. After what seemed like a lifetime, she stood up and left the room. I sat alone, staring at the guest list, the names blending together as my vision blurred. The following day, things were tight. Lily rarely spoke to me, and when she did, it was in few, polite sentences. I could not stand it. This chilly, detached version of her was worse than a yelling fight. It felt like a wall had been built between us, and neither of us knew how to break it down. I kept telling myself it will all be over. We adored each other. We had gone through so much together. Surely this was only a rough patch. But deep inside, I sensed something had changed. Trust has been broken, and once that happens, it is difficult to put the parts back together. A week later, everything detonated. I arrived home late from work, fatigued and depleted. I came in the door and saw Lily sitting at the dining table. Her face was pale, her hands trembled, and the tension in the air was oppressive. Something is wrong. What's going on? I inquired hesitantly. She drew a hesitant breath and glanced up at me, remorse on her face. Harry, I need to tell you something, she continued, her voice shaking. My gut constricted as a terrible sensation swept through me. What is this about? I inquired, attempting to maintain my voice steady. I reached out to Jazzy, she murmured slowly, almost whispering. For a second, I thought I hadn't heard her correctly. You what? The words rang out louder than I intended. I found her on social media a few months ago, she explained, tears welling up in her eyes. I've been talking to her. I just wanted to understand what happened between you two and I invited her to the wedding. It felt like the ground had gone beneath my feet. I could not breathe. My skull vibrated with a low, deafening scream. You invited her? My voice trembled in amazement. I'm so sorry, she wailed. I thought it was the right thing to do. I thought if she came, maybe you two could finally. No. I interrupted her, my voice loud and quivering with rage. You went behind my back. You did exactly what I told you not to do. You betrayed me. Harry, please, she begged, her tears flowing freely now. I love you. I was just trying to help. Help? I asked, my laugh lifeless and frigid. You think this is helping? You knew how I felt and you did it anyway. This isn't love, Lily. This is manipulation. She grabbed for me, but I backed away, my heart splitting into jagged, terrible bits. Harry, wait, she exclaimed, her voice cracking. There's more. I thought she changed. I really did. But when I spoke to her, I realized I was wrong. She hesitated, as if the words themselves were painful to repeat. She hesitated, attempting to calm herself. She said, "Oh, you're his new girl. How can you even be with such a loser?" My chest squeezed as I clenched my fists. Of course Jazzy had not changed. Of course she'd lash out, even if someone tried to be friendly. Lily continued, tears running down her cheeks. That's when I realized you were right all along. I was so wrong to reach out. Harry, I thought I was helping, but I only made things worse. I see now how much she hurt you. I'm so sorry. Her words weighed heavily in the air, yet they did nothing to alleviate my feelings of anguish and betrayal. You should have trusted me, I stated softly but firmly. You should have listened when I told you what I needed. Lily wailed, her face in her hands, and I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. My heart was torn apart, and all I could think of was how the one person I'd trusted the most had gone behind my back, believing she understood better than I did. If you can't respect me enough to trust my judgment, then we have nothing left, I told you. She cried. Don't say that. We can fix this. I shook my head. The pain was too much to bear. No, Lily. You broke my trust, and without trust, there's nothing left to fix. I turned to walk away, each step heavier than the last. The air between us felt final, like a door slamming shut on the life we had created together. I knew it was over, and it hurt more than I could ever express. The silence in our flat felt oppressive following the fight. I spent the night in the guest room, staring at the ceiling and repeating every word we had said. My head felt like a cyclone from which I couldn't escape. Sleep did not come, only an unending cycle of rage, betrayal, and heartache. In the cold light of morning, the weight of everything landed on my chest. I could hear Lily moving around and the muted sound of her packing. I didn't have to inquire what she was doing. I sensed the life we'd constructed over 5 years was crumbling. Again, Jazzy prevented us from stopping it. When she eventually went out of the room, luggage in hand, our gazes connected. Her face was smeared with tears, yet her look was one of quiet resolution. "Are you sure this is what you want, Harry?" she inquired, barely above a whisper. I swallowed hard, my throat tightening. "No, Lily. This isn't what I want. But it's what you've left me with." She nodded and wiped her eyes with the back of her palm. "I never meant to hurt you." "I know," I replied, my voice cracking. "But that doesn't change what you did." We remained there for a minute, the air between us heavy with unspoken words. Then she turned to walk out the door. The sound of it closing behind her was a finality I was unprepared for. I sunk into the couch, the emptiness of the flat pressing against me. It felt like the walls were closing in, and the quiet was deafening in its finality. The following few days were a blur. I formally canceled the wedding, including the location, caterers, and florist. Each call seemed like another stab in the heart, as if I were disassembling a dream piece by piece. The reactions were mixed. My pals attempted to be supportive, but some of them clearly did not understand. Lily's family, on the other hand, made no attempt to conceal their outrage. Her mother called me a callous monster, accusing me of sabotaging a wonderful relationship over little sibling rivalry. Her brother, whom I used to be close to, sent me a long, furious text telling me I was making the worst mistake of my life. I looked at the screen, feeling numb. They didn't know the entire story. They didn't realize how far the pain went. In the midst of all this, my family decided to weigh in. My parents contacted me repeatedly, leaving voicemails ranging from pleading to guilt-tripping. My mother's voice was unsteady and sad. "Harry, please. This could be an opportunity to mend the family. Don't let this break everything apart." But I didn't tear anything apart. It was Jazzy, and now Lily. The people who were supposed to safeguard and support me had crossed borders that I could not forgive. One evening, after a long day at work, I arrived home to an email from Jazzy. I almost erased it before reading it, but my curiosity won out. The subject line simply read, "I'm sorry." The email was lengthy, full of apologies and explanations. She described how she spent years in therapy attempting to understand her jealousy and bitterness. She recognized that what she did to me was wrong, but she claimed to be a different person now. She wanted to reconcile, make amends, and be my sister again. I stared at the words on the computer, feeling just tiredness. Was I expected to trust that a few years of therapy would relieve the agony she had caused? Could money undo the pain of losing my ideal job, the embarrassment, and the years of effort to rebuild my career? The scars were too deep. I closed the email without responding. I spent the following weekend alone, attempting to comprehend everything. My thoughts kept going back to Lily. I missed her. The way she laughed at my stupid jokes. The way her eyes gleamed when she spoke about her interests. But I couldn't shake the sensation that the trust we had built was gone. It wasn't only about Jazzy, it was about Lily choosing to ignore something I had started from the beginning and do the exact opposite to show a point. I went to play basketball, hoping to sweat off my frustration. I lifted till my legs burned, concentrating on the physical agony rather than the emotional one. After that, I sat in my car, soaked in sweat, staring out the window. Was I being overly stubborn? Was it worth losing Lily for this? But every time I considered reaching out, I remembered the pain in my chest when she revealed she'd gone behind my back, the sense of betrayal, and the harsh awareness that the person I loved had not respected my boundaries. Regardless of how much I loved her, the wound was too fresh and too deep. On Tuesday morning I arrived at work feeling like a ghost. My manager, Ashley, a no-nonsense woman, drew me aside. She had always been supportive and today was no exception. "Are you doing okay?" she inquired, her tone quieter than usual. I forced a smile. I'm getting there. She nodded and studied me for a bit. Sometimes standing your ground is the hardest thing to do, but it's worth it. Her comments stayed with me. I spent the rest of the day submerged in code, allowing the rhythm of work to distract me from the confusion in my thoughts. By the time I arrived home, the flat felt more empty than ever. But for the first time in days, I felt a small sense of calm. I had made the correct option. It didn't make the anguish any less genuine, but at least I hadn't cheated myself. That night I deleted Jazzy's email. I did not need to read it again. I knew the answer. Life went on in the days that followed, but I felt as if I was stuck in time. The apartment, once filled with warmth and laughter, suddenly felt chilly and empty. Lily's absence was an ongoing ache. Her closet side was vacant, while the bathroom shelves were half empty. I kept expecting to see her, hearing her voice in the quiet times, only to be reminded that she had left. I immersed myself in work, utilizing the long hours and difficult assignments as a distraction. But no matter how busy I kept myself, the weight of it all lingered. The betrayal, the broken trust, the future that had slipped through my fingers. Everything followed me like a shadow. Then my folks called me. My phone buzzed late one evening, and I briefly contemplated ignoring it. But something prompted me to pick up. "Hi, Mom," I said with a bland voice. "Harry," she murmured, her voice wary. "Please attend supper this weekend. We need to talk." "I don't think that's a good idea," I said, exhausted. "Please," she urged. "It's important." Despite my better judgment, I agreed. Perhaps a part of me still hoped they'd understand, to finally comprehend my point of view. But deep down, I knew I was preparing myself for disappointment. Saturday evening arrived and I drove to my folks' house with my stomach in knots. My memories of my boyhood home were different now, tainted with a sadness I couldn't ignore. As I climbed up the steps, I took a deep breath to brace myself. My mom answered the door and greeted me with a strained smile. "I'm so glad you came," she whispered gently, drawing me into a hug that felt more like a plea than a comfort. I stepped inside and immediately realized something was wrong. The air seemed heavy, as if a storm was about to break. And then I noticed Jazzy sitting at the dining table. Her eyes met mine, wide and filled with what appeared to be regret. An icy feeling of rage swept through me. "What is she doing here?" I questioned, my voice trembling. "Harry, please," my father pleaded, his face painted. "We just want to help you make peace." "What is wrong with everyone?" I asked, the treachery hitting me like a blow in the stomach. "You did this behind my back," I continued, feeling the weight of the moment descend on me. "You ambushed me." My mother's eyes flooded with tears. "We thought if you two just talked, you could finally heal." I shook my head and clenched my fists. "You don't get it. You never have." "Harry, wait," Jazzy said, her voice shaking. "I just want to apologize." Her comments struck me like empty noise. I turned to face my parents, bitterness rising in my throat. "You're still trying to fix something that's broken beyond repair. You can't force this." My father's voice cracked. "We just want our family back." "This is your family now," I added, my voice firm. "Where trust doesn't matter, where betrayal is swept under the rug." I moved toward the door, the weight of finality bearing down on my shoulders. "I told you where I stood. If you can't respect that, then I don't know what else to say." I walked away, my heart thumping in my ears. My mother's sobbing followed me down the steps, but I did not look back. The chilly night air hit my face, and I felt clearer than I had in a long time. The lines were drawn. I did not cross theirs, and I would not allow them to cross mine. That night, I sat in my car for a long time before heading home. My phone was buzzing with texts from my parents, Jazzy and Lily. They probably told her about it. I disregarded them all. I was not prepared to answer, explain myself again, or justify my pain. I'd had enough. When I eventually returned home, the emptiness of the flat no longer felt oppressive. Instead, it felt like I had enough space to breathe. I was tired of clinging onto hurtful relationships and attempting to fit parts together that no longer fit. I spent the following few days in peaceful reflection. I was aware that I had burned bridges that could not be rebuilt, yet there was also a peculiar sensation of liberation. I was no longer carrying the weight of others' expectations. I didn't have to forgive someone who hadn't earned it. One evening I decided to get together with several pals. They had been worrying about me, so I decided it was time to come out of the shadows. We went to a modest downtown bar with low music and open chat. As I sipped my drink and listened to their laughter, I realized how alone I had become. My engagement did not mean that the world had ended. Life continued to move, and so could I. Later that night, as we were leaving, my friend Sam tapped my shoulder. "You did the right thing, man," he replied. "It takes guts to stand up for yourself." I nodded, a faint smile appearing. For the first time I believed it. Standing my stand had cost me, but losing myself would have cost far more. The next morning, I went for a walk on the beach. The waves lapped gently on the coast, and the early sun reflected off the sea in brilliant golden hues. I took a big breath, allowing the salty sea air to enter my lungs. There was certainly grief and loss, but there was also hope. I was finally free to create a life in which my boundaries were respected, and I did not have to sacrifice my tranquility for someone else's definition of family. I had no idea what the future contained, but for the first time in a long time, I was content with that. One step at a time, I'd figure it out. The days became weeks, and life fell into a new routine. I wasn't the same person I was before the breakup, but I was starting to feel more stable. There was a weird peace in the silence, focusing solely on myself. It felt as if I was gradually constructing the foundations of my life. Not for anyone else, but for myself. I spent more time with friends who accepted me as I was. We hiked hidden routes around the coastal cliffs, sat around bonfires on chilly evenings, and told stories that reminded me of what true connection was like. These friendships were genuine, unfettered by expectations or betrayals. They gave me the strength to continue forward. At work, things were consistent. I poured myself into tasks, accepting challenges that pushed me to improve. My manager, Denise, observed a change in me. One day she approached me after a meeting. "You've been doing great, Harry," she said with a smile. "I can tell how focused you are. Keep it up." I nodded, feeling a sense of pride. Her remarks reassured me that despite everything, I was still capable and determined. My past had not broken me. It had shaped me into something greater. One weekend, I decided to declutter the apartment. It was time to let go of the things that kept me stuck in the past. As I searched through the drawers and closets, I discovered mementos from my relationship with Lily. A stray earring, an old movie ticket stub, and a half-written grocery list in her handwriting. Each thing was a memory, a glimpse of what we had. But rather than drowning in nostalgia, I let them all go. I put them inside a box, sealed it, and set it aside. Letting go did not mean forgetting. It meant deciding to move forward without the burden of what may have been. The apartment felt different, cleaner and lighter. It was finally my space. I moved the furniture, added some plants and hung new artwork. These modest modifications have a significant impact. The space felt like a mirror of who I was today, rather than who I was before. My phone buzzed one evening as I was cooking dinner, a new interest that I was gradually improving at. My mom sent me a text. "We miss you. Please contact us when you're ready." I looked at the message for a long time. The hurt from the dinner ambush persisted, but I knew my parents weren't awful people. They simply didn't grasp the extent of my anguish, or the boundaries I needed to protect myself. I did not respond right away. I needed more time, and that was fine. Healing did not need to be hastened. A few weeks later, at a rooftop party in downtown, I met someone new. Her name was Emily. She had an easy smile and a manner of making conversation seem smooth. We discussed everything, from our favorite books to road vacations to the best barbecue locations in Texas. She didn't probe into my background or ask questions that I wasn't prepared to answer. She was just enjoying the time with me. That was refreshing. I did not have to justify myself or defend my bounds. I could just be. Emily smiled at me as the sky turned orange and purple with the sunset. "Feel like getting a milkshake?" she asked. I chuckled. "Sure, as long as I don't have to sing karaoke." She chuckled, and I felt a warmth I hadn't had in a long time. It was hardly the exhilaration of falling in love. It was a calm consolation to know that new beginnings were possible. That night when I walked back into my apartment, I discovered something. I wasn't over what had happened. Jazzy's deception and Lily's broken trust left lasting scars. But the scars did not define me. They were only half of my story. I felt stronger now, more aware of what I needed and deserved. I stood near the window looking out at the Austin skyline. The globe was still moving and so was I. The way ahead was uncertain, but I was not afraid. I had limits, self-esteem, and a solid understanding of who I was. Standing firm can sometimes lead to the loss of loved ones. But, in the end, it is also about discovering yourself. Thanks for watching and sticking around till the end. If you enjoyed these stories, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next drama-filled episode. My fiancée asked for a break due to a new guy, so I left and moved cities. She's now stalking me. Her parents apologized, but I refused to talk. I'm 34 years old, and I'm not sure if I'm in the wrong for refusing to speak with my ex, Sarah, who is 29. There's a lot of history here, and I'll try to explain it fully. In mid-2022, I met Sarah at work, and we hit it off right away. I soon fell for her, and we began dating shortly after. However, Sarah ended our relationship early on due to a little disagreement. To make matters worse, she caused a commotion in front of everyone at work. I was sad, but I did not want to quit my job at first. Eventually, I realized I still had feelings for her, and seeing her every day was too hard. That's when I decided to quit and look for a new job. We lived close together, so we ran into each other regularly over the next few months. We began conversing again, but despite my feelings for her, I couldn't bring myself to consider getting back together. I was terribly saddened by what she had done. After a few months, she told me she regretted ending our relationship over something so petty. She stated that doing it in front of everyone was terrible, and she had been reflecting about it ever since. She appeared sincerely sorry, and I could see she meant it. I asked if she wanted to give our relationship another chance because I believed her apologies were genuine. She consented, and by early 2023, we were formally reunited. 1 year later, everything was going well. We discussed marriage and constructing a future together, which made me feel prepared to take the next step. I decided to surprise her with a proposal and began working additional hours to pay for a house so we could get married. Not long after, I didn't tell her why I was working so hard since I wanted it to be a surprise. Then out of nowhere, she requested a break. I was taken aback, and when I questioned why, she refused to explain. Around the same time, I noticed she had been talking non-stop about a new person at her employment, but then she stopped mentioning him completely, which made me suspicious, perplexed, and hurt. I contacted one of my close friends, Emily, not her real name, who, together with her partner, continued to work at the same company as Sarah. I complained to Emily about what was going on and asked if she knew anything. She replied she didn't because she worked in a different department, but she promised to check around. Emily followed up with me a few days later. She told me Sarah had been feeling distant from me lately, especially since I was working longer hours and not getting out as often. Emily stated that some of Sarah's coworkers had encouraged her to take a break, believing I wasn't treating her well and wasn't as involved in the relationship. On top of that, they were attempting to link her with a new guy at work, claiming they'd be a better match. I told Emily about my plans to propose and purchase a home for Sarah and me. That was why I had been working so much. I wanted to surprise her with something large. Sarah called me after about 2 weeks and suggested we meet. I agreed, but I made it clear that I needed an explanation for why she wanted a break before we could talk about anything else. She mentioned how detached I had appeared, adding it made her feel like I wasn't as invested in the relationship anymore. I told her that if she had just spoken with me about it, she would have realized there was a reason for my actions, but it didn't matter anymore. She then mentioned the new guy at her employment. I said his name before she could, and she was astonished, wondering how I knew. I assured her that I was not an idiot. I noted how she abruptly stopped talking about him after constantly bringing him up. She said she'd never cheated on me. I said that hunting for someone better at the first hint of difficulties may be considered cheating by some. At that point, I informed her I did not want to hear anything else she had to say. It didn't matter if she wanted to reconcile, I was ending my relationship with her regardless. The split left me extremely hurt. I couldn't bear being in the same town, so I requested my employer for a move and used the money I'd saved for the project to start over in a new city. While speaking with Emily, the friend I had previously vented to, she apologized to me. She stated that she had made a mistake by informing Sarah about my plans to propose and purchase a home. Emily stated Sarah burst into tears after hearing that. Emily's candor was welcomed, but it did not influence the outcome. By mid-December last year, I had returned to my hometown to celebrate Christmas and New Year's with my family. Some friends wanted to throw a party to bring everyone together because many of us, including myself, had moved away and were only returning for the holidays. Sarah also received an invitation. We barely spoke that night, just a short hi in passing. I glanced at her and noticed her smiling while speaking with a group of women. That smile recalled so many memories. I realized that seeing her smile made me feel exactly the same way I felt the first time I saw it. I wondered to myself, how screwed up am I that I still feel this way? Despite those residual emotions, I was still saddened and extremely upset by the way things had ended. Looking back, I've started to resent myself. I should have paid closer attention to how she felt. I could have informed her about the additional work and why I was doing it. Perhaps things could have turned out differently. Later that evening, one of my friends revealed that Sarah's relationship with the guy at work had only lasted a few months. After the holidays, I intended to return to the city where I now dwell. My vacation ended on January 6th, so I planned to go on Friday. That way, I'd have Saturday to tidy up at home and prepare for the week ahead, and Sunday to unwind before returning to work. Before I departed, one of my buddies from home contacted me. He stated he had a favor to request on behalf of someone else and warned me that I would not like it. I could already feel my stomach dropping. He then told me it was Sarah. She was moving to the city where I live to work for a relative's company, and she needed a ride. He asked if I could take her. I didn't think about it before saying no. The thought of being locked in a car with her for hours was too much to take. It would have been excruciatingly embarrassing, just like the party, and I wasn't prepared to put myself through it. He insisted that Sarah and I talk, but I was having none of it. I returned home, and last week I went for a run. When I stopped to relax briefly at a park, I heard a familiar voice say, "Hi." It was Sarah. She attempted to start a conversation by asking how I was and emphasizing that we didn't get to converse during the party. But I cut her off, stating I didn't want to speak with her. She told me not to be like that and that we should have a chat, but I declined. She questioned how I could still dislike her after over a year and everything we'd been through, but I told her it wasn't resentment. I was quite truthful. I explained that thinking about her, talking about her, or even seeing her still hurts a lot, which is why I couldn't talk to her. She stated that this was exactly why we needed to communicate. I didn't understand the point, so I simply walked away. Sarah has tried to approach me twice since then, and both times I have turned her down. Some of my pals believe I'm being overly harsh and should talk to her for closure. Others argue that torturing her for the rest of her life is unacceptable, but that is not the point of this. I have no anger or ill thoughts against her anymore. I admit that I share some of the blame, but it still stings. I can't talk to her because it's like reopening an old wound that has never completely healed. So, AITA, why are you refusing to talk to her? After reading the comments, the original poster thanked everyone for their advice. The OP simply wants to explain things better. OP explained that their friends were not contacting or emailing them, telling them to talk to Sarah. It was simply the perspective of some of them when the matter was raised. Update, February 2, 2025. Hello everyone, I wanted to provide an update and appreciate everyone for their thoughts. I read over each comment, and while I didn't react to everyone, it was only because I didn't have anything to say. I'm grateful to everyone who expressed their opinions. It's been quite helpful. After reading everything and thinking about it, I've chosen to adhere to my choice not to speak to Sarah. I neglected to include it in my original post, but I did notify a few people that I blocked her everywhere after we broke up for the second time. Over the last 2 days, it appears that her insistence has backfired. Some of our shared acquaintances, including those who first suggested I talk to her, have become tired of her continuous attempts to reach me. They appear to have turned against her as a result of this. Emily, the friend I was venting to at the time, posted about stalkers on social media 3 days ago. She did not name Sarah, but many people understood what she meant. I've also seen a few comments on my initial post that suggest Sarah was stalking me. Her job in the same city, as well as her serendipitous arrival in the park, support this theory. For what it's worth, I know her uncle owns a company here, so that could be the real reason she moved, but that's not my concern, and I'm not going to investigate it. Things have been quieter. Friends have abandoned the subject, and Sarah hasn't attempted to contact them again. That was until yesterday. I watched the UFC event with some coworkers. When it ended, I was on my way to my car when my phone called. A mutual friend called. She stated she had spoken with Sarah and asked if she could relay a message. I sighed and urged her to get it done quickly. Sarah just stated that she knows why I don't want to talk to her. She vowed she wouldn't contact us again, but she still believes we should communicate. She said the door was open if I ever wanted to discuss. I told my buddy I didn't have a message to return and begged her not to bring Sarah up again in our chats. If what Sarah mentioned is correct, it is a relief, but I am not holding my breath. I wouldn't be surprised if she tried something different. Perhaps she believes that giving me space will compel me to approach her, but it will not. That chapter of my life is currently closed. I simply want to focus on myself. I doubt I will be dating anyone anytime soon. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that I should get to know individuals better before committing to a relationship. I've also been thinking about how loosely I use the term friend. That's another aspect of my life I need to reconsider. Some of the people I've called friends have shown that they don't have my best interests at heart. A couple folks mentioned therapy in the comments, and I'll confess it's something I've thought about. For the time being, I'm allowing myself to heal on my own, but if I don't feel better after a while, I'll look into it further. Thank you to everyone who took the time to remark. Your counsel has been quite helpful in sorting everything out. Update 2. February 16, 2025. Sarah has been missing for several weeks, and no one has mentioned her in discussion. That is a nice thing. Then, last Tuesday, February 11th, I received a direct message from Sarah's mother. She stated she wanted to apologize for her daughter's actions and requested me to call her. I've always had a good relationship with Sarah's parents. They are genuinely lovely individuals. Even during both breakups, they were always respectful and never went too. I didn't want to talk about Sarah anymore, but I also didn't want to avoid her mother. After considering it for a few minutes, I decided to phone her. However, if she tried to get me to communicate with Sarah or anything like, I would gently cease the call. When she responded, she put me on speaker so Sarah's father could join us. I almost expected to hear Sarah's voice, but thankfully, that did not happen. The conversation was actually very good. They began by apologizing for Sarah's recent actions. I quickly informed them there was nothing to apologize for, but they insisted, claiming it was the right thing to do. They also said that they had no idea what was going on until recently. When they found out, they called Sarah and had a lengthy conversation with her. Her father confessed that the chat was more appropriate for an adolescent than an almost 30-year-old woman. Sarah vowed that she would stay away from me and seek therapy. I felt relieved, not just for myself, but also for her. Everything that happened between us was not ideal, but I sincerely wish her the best. I hope she finds happiness. Before we hung up, I thanked her parents and expressed how much I admired and respected them. I can now state with certainty that this is over. Sarah would never violate her parents' confidence. Thank you everybody for your advice, it meant a lot. Excluded from Christmas for being a plumber, I cut off my sister's law school money. Now she's begging, and I'm better off without her. Okay, so I've been sitting on this story for a long, trying to figure out where to even begin describing this disaster. I suppose I should introduce myself first. I'm 32, unmarried, and own my own plumbing business. Yeah, I know, it's not the most glamorous job, according to certain people, including my family. But, to be honest, I make a lot of money and enjoy my job. There's something rewarding about fixing difficulties and assisting others, even if it occasionally requires dealing with their literalism. LOL. Amanda, my 26-year-old sister, is currently attending law school, which I have been paying for. Yeah, you read that correctly. I've been paying her full tuition since she started. Her lover was a hotshot doctor at the local hospital, a real piece of work. But we will get to him later. So this is where things went awry. About a week before Christmas, I received this call from my mother. Now, you have to realize something about my mother. She never calls just to speak or check on me. It's always because she wants something or there's a family issue that needs to be resolved, usually involving money, to be honest. However, this call was different. She begins with a strange, hesitant tone, as if she is about to tell you that your dog has died. Then she lays the bombshell on me. I'm not invited to Christmas this year. Just like that. There is no notice, discussion, or anything. At first, I assumed I misheard her, as if she had said they were altering the date or something. But, nah. She goes on to say that it might be best if I sit this one out because they want to keep things comfortable for everyone. I'm sitting there, thinking, what the actual, one, since this is so unexpected. We've always celebrated Christmas together, even while I was working long hours to get my business off the ground. Sure, my family has always been odd about my job, they enjoy the money I make, but God forbid they tell anyone what their son and brother does for a living. So I pressed her on it, asking, what's the real reason? She began hedging and hawing, talking in circles about professional looks and everyone's comfort, but she refused to give me a clear answer. It wasn't until later that day that I learned the true cause, from my cousin Sarah. She'd overheard Amanda discussing it with our mother earlier that week. Apparently, my lovely sister had informed our parents that having me for Christmas would be awkward because I did not fit in with her and her boyfriend's professional standing. Allow that to soak in for a minute. My own sister, who I've been helping through law school, was ashamed to have me for Christmas because I'm only a plumber. She was concerned about how her fancy doctor partner would react to having to sit at the same table as someone who worked with their hands for a career. The more I thought about it, the more things fell into place, like how Amanda never invited me to any of her law school events, despite the fact that I was paying for her to attend, or how she always changed the subject when her friends asked what her brother did for a living, or how she never introduced me to her boyfriend, despite the fact that they'd been dating for nearly a year. Do you know what the worst part was? My parents agreed with her. They truly believed it was okay to exclude their own son from Christmas because his employment would make their beloved daughter's boyfriend uncomfortable. The same son who has been providing for the family since he was 18. The same son who built his own successful firm from the beginning. The same son who has been paying for their golden child's law school education without complaint. My mother tried to sugarcoat it with phrases like, "Well, honey, you know how these professional circles are. And maybe, next year, when you've developed your career more. What the boss does that even mean? I own my own business. I have staff. I earn 6 figures performing honest work. But apparently it isn't evolved enough because I don't wear a suit and tie to work." I spent the entire day stewing over this information, growing increasingly irritated. Not the heated, angry type of pissed off, but rather a cool, calm knowledge that my family, particularly my sister, had been exploiting me while being ashamed of me the entire time. That's when I decided it was enough. If I was too embarrassed to bring to Christmas dinner, my money would be too embarrassing to spend for law school. What kind of message would it send to my sister's fancy beau if he discovered her law degree was paid for by a gas-passing plumber? But hold on, this is only the beginning. The real, what AITA show began when I made the decision to take action. And let me tell you, karma is especially when it comes with the accompanying student loan burden. So, after learning that I was barred from celebrating Christmas because my blue-collar profession would insult my sister's boyfriend's delicate sensibilities, I was in a strange state of mind. You know that feeling when you're so enraged that you suddenly become strangely calm? That is where I was at. I spent the entire night reading over previous text messages and discussions with Amanda. And holy, guys, the signs were everywhere. I was simply too blind, or perhaps foolish to see them. For example, last spring, she had a graduation party to celebrate finishing her first year of law school. I had truly paid for the entire year, but I didn't receive an invitation. When I approached her about it, she lied about it being a minor issue in her study group. Later, I learned from Facebook that it was a large party at a posh downtown restaurant. Then there was the time when she required a new laptop for class. Despite the fact that I am very knowledgeable about computers, she asked me to simply transfer the money to her account rather than accompany her to choose it. Nowadays, it's almost a requirement. Even in plumbing, we use tablets and specialized software to provide job bids and schedule appointments. She said that she was too busy to go shopping together. But now I'm quite sure she didn't want to be seen with her plumber brother in the Apple store. Looking back, it's sort of funny in a sad way. For example, whenever she needed money, which was often, she would text her humiliating blue-collar brother. But when it came to acknowledging my presence in her fancy new life, the radio is silent. I decided to dig. The benefits of having a cousin who is still on the family group chat, LOL. Amanda had been preparing for the Christmas exclusion for weeks. She told our parents that her boyfriend, Craig, yes, his name is Craig, was from a very prestigious family, and she was concerned about making a good impression. Apparently, having a plumber sibling may harm her professional prospects, or some elitist, like that. Want to know the true kicker? My cousin Sarah, bless her messy, drama-loving heart, forwarded me screenshots of Amanda's remarks from the family chat. She had actually written, and I'm quoting this directly, "I just don't want Craig to think our family isn't, educated. It could affect how his family sees me, and they have so many connections in the legal world. Educated? Educated." I wanted to respond and inform her that the reason she's getting an education is because her uneducated plumber brother pays $43,000 per year in school. But I held back. I was beginning to formulate a strategy, and sometimes you have to play the long game. As I thought about it, I realized it wasn't only about Christmas. This was about years of my family, particularly Amanda, treating me as a filthy little secret. They were pleased to accept my dirty plumber money, but God forbid they acknowledge how I earned it. Here's a fascinating truth about plumbing that most people don't know. We have to study extensively. For example, years of apprenticeship, license examinations, and ongoing education to stay current with new legislation and technologies. I probably spent more time researching water systems and construction codes than Amanda did studying tort law. But because I work with my hands, they treat me like an idiot who couldn't make it in the real professional world. The reality is, I selected plumbing because I am skilled at it and saw an opportunity. I began working as an apprentice right out of high school, learned everything I could, obtained my licenses, and eventually launched my own firm. I currently have 3 vehicles on the road, 2 full-time staff, and more work than I can handle. But to my family, I am still the embarrassing brother who fixes toilets. I kept thinking about all the times I went late at work or did additional work to make sure I could pay Amanda's tuition. All those times I postponed purchasing new items for myself or contributing more to my retirement account because family came first. Meanwhile, she was actively attempting to conceal my existence from her new lover and his family. That's when my cousin threw another bomb at me. Craig's family did not appear to be overly concerned with such matters. His uncle, a successful contractor, built their family house. Amanda had simply assumed they would look down on me since that is how she sees me. I sat with all of this information for a few days, monitoring the family group chat via Sarah. They'd removed me from it weeks ago, ostensibly to minimize any discomfort surrounding Christmas arrangements. Amanda was going on and on about how pleased she was to host Craig for Christmas dinner, how his family had ties at all of the city's large law firms, and how this could be her opportunity to earn a summer position through his contacts. No one stood up for me the entire time, not my parents, nor any of my other relatives. Nobody remarked, "Hey, maybe we shouldn't exclude the guy who's been supporting Amanda through school." Everyone was just pleased about Amanda getting a prestigious internship through her boyfriend's family. That's when I realized exactly what I needed to do. If they wanted to pretend they didn't have a plumber in the family, I'd help them make that lie a reality, beginning with Amanda's tuition payments. So, after stewing over all this nonsense for a few days, I decided it was time to make my move. But here's the thing. I didn't want to write a furious text or anything. I wanted to do it in such a manner that they couldn't distort my words or make me look like the evil person, which is, incidentally, my family's favorite hobby. I waited until I knew Amanda's next tuition payment was coming due. It was due in about 2 weeks, and she was always really worried around this time. Normally, she'd start dropping subtle hints about remembering the payment deadline, like, "Oh, the school's been sending reminder emails," or something. What about this time? The radio is silent. She must have assumed that the payment would simply come, as it always did, even after they had barred me from attending Christmas. Quick side note, I had been paying my tuition payments straight to the institution using their online portal. Amanda had set it up herself when she first started, and she provided me all of the login information, which was really convenient since she considered me as her personal ATM. Right? Anyway, I got into the portal and noticed my upcoming payment. $21,500 for the spring semester. That's when I realized how much money I'd been putting at her studies while she was actively attempting to conceal my existence from her boyfriend. Do you know how many toilets you need to fix to generate that much money? Answer: a lot more than most people realize. So I phoned Amanda. I didn't text her, I called because I wanted to hear her voice when I dropped the bomb. She picked up on the 3rd ring, sounded angry, as if I was interrupting something essential. "Hey," she remarked in that tone that shouts, "Make it quick, I'm kind of in the middle of something." "Oh, sorry," I replied, attempting to sound nonchalant. "Just wanted to talk about your tuition payment. It's due soon, right?" Her voice changed instantly. Suddenly, she became all lovely and interested. "Oh yeah, thanks for remembering. It's due on the 15th. You're still okay to cover it, right?" "Actually," I replied. "I've been thinking about what you told Mom and Dad about Christmas, about how having a plumber brother might embarrass you in front of Craig and his family." There was complete stillness on her end. You could almost hear her brain short-circuiting as she attempted to figure out how to spin this. "That's not who told you that," she eventually exclaimed. "Does it matter?" I inquired. "Is it true or not?" More silence. Then she sought to enter damage control mode. "Listen, you don't understand. Craig's family, they're really particular about these things. His father's a judge. His mother's on all these charity boards. I just thought it would be better if you pretended your brother doesn't exist." I completed for her. "Because he's just a lowly plumber." "That's not fair," she complained. "I never said that. I need them to take me seriously if I want to have a future in law. You know how these circles work." I couldn't help laughing. "Actually, I don't know how these circles work. I'm just a plumber, remember? But you know what I do know? The exact amount I've paid for your law school so far. Want me to break it down for you?" She began to say something, but I continued going. "First year costs $43,000. Second year, first semester cost $21,500. Plus all the other costs, your laptop, textbooks, and that special study program you simply had to have. According to my calculations, That's around $770,000 thus far. Everything was paid for by your embarrassing plumber brother. Why are you acting like this? She moaned. You know how important this is for my future. Craig's family has connections at all the top firms, and having a plumber brother would ruin that. I inquired. Even though that plumber brother is the only reason you're in law school in the first place. You promised to help me, she replied. You said you'd support my dreams. That's when I said it. Yeah, I did, when you were proud to call me your brother. But if I'm too embarrassed to have Christmas dinner, then I guess my money should be too embarrassing to pay for your tuition. You guys, the screech that came out of her mouth sounded like a pterodactyl's tail being stepped on. You can't do that, she shouted. The payment is due in 2 weeks. What am I supposed to do? I don't know, I responded, feeling strangely peaceful. Maybe ask Craig. I'm sure his fancy doctor salary could cover it. Or is my dirty plumber money the only kind you're willing to touch? She began crying, full on dramatic sobbing. Please, she asked. I'll tell Mom and Dad I was wrong. You can come to Christmas. Just please don't do this to me. No, I replied. I don't want to come to Christmas. I don't want to embarrass you in front of Craig and his family. In fact, I don't want anything to do with any of you anymore. Consider this my last payment to the family that's ashamed of me. I hung up while she was still crying and begging and immediately banned her phone number. I poured myself a drink and braced myself for the impending heat storm. After that, everything began. My mom came first. She called around 5 times in a row before I eventually answered. The moment I responded, she launched into guilt trips, which are her specialty. She was crying about how I was wrecking the family and Amanda's future due to a silly misunderstanding. Silly misunderstanding? I asked. She literally told you she was ashamed of what I do for a living. The same job that's been paying her tuition. She didn't mean it like that, Mom explained. You know how Amanda is. She just gets caught up in trying to impress people sometimes. She looks up to you. I almost choked on my drink. She basically barred me from Christmas because she was humiliated by me. How the hell is that looking up to me? Then Mom took a different approach. Consider what this will do to her relationship with Craig. His family might greatly benefit her career. Oh, so you want to talk about Craig? I interrupted her off. It's funny how important he and his family are, yet your own son isn't even good enough to sit at the Christmas table. She started blubbering about how that wasn't what we meant and how I was taking everything too personally, which is a typical mom move, trying to make me feel like I'm overreacting when they're the ones being nasty. When my father called, he went straight for the angry approach, which was unsurprising, and he started ranting about how I was being selfish and vengeful, calling me a little one for endangering Amanda's education. Isn't that Father of the Year material? Let me get this straight, I told him. I'm a little mainamwadan for not wanting to spend thousands of dollars on someone who is ashamed of me. Make it make sense, Dad. We raised you to be better than this, he hissed. Family supports family, I replied. Really? Is that what you intended when you agreed to exclude me from Christmas? Was that a supportive family? He tried to explain himself by claiming that sometimes we had to make sacrifices for the better welfare of the family, which apparently included kissing Craig's ass in the hopes that he would boost Amanda's career. But what really struck me was that no one apologized for how they treated me during any of these calls. Instead, it was all about how I was bad for sticking up for myself, how I was being petty and vengeful, and how I was letting my pride get in the way of family. Then came the flying monkeys. My aunt called to tell me how disappointed she was in my behavior, my uncle texted, saying I needed to man up and be the bigger person, and even my cousin Sarah, who told me about Amanda's lies, messaged me, saying maybe I was taking things too far. But you know what? None of them offered to help pay Amanda's tuition themselves. The best part? Amanda actually went and told Craig what was going on, and I guess she thought he'd offer to help with the tuition instead. According to Sarah, who's still keeping me updated, Craig got really quiet and started asking questions, like, why hadn't Amanda ever mentioned she had a brother? Why didn't she introduce them? Why did her brother pay for her law school in the first place? Craig couldn't understand why Amanda would keep her brother's existence hidden just because he was a plumber. It turned out that his uncle, the one who built their family home, started as a plumber before becoming a contractor, and Craig had actually worked summers with him in high school. When Amanda tried to explain her reasoning, she just dug herself deeper. She started talking about professional appearances and social circles, and Craig got more and more upset, saying he couldn't believe she'd hide and disrespect her own brother, who'd been supporting her education, just for some perceived social status. Craig told her the next day that he wanted time to think about their relationship because her actions revealed a side of her personality that he didn't like. Who knew he had principles? Meanwhile, my parents were constantly blowing up my phone. Mom alternated between crying and begging, Dad between cursing and threatening. Amanda kept calling from other numbers after I blocked hers, and I ultimately turned off my phone for a few days. It was all about how I was ruining everything by not just shutting up and paying like a good little ATM, but I was done being their ATM. If standing up for myself made me the bad guy in their eyes, so be it. It was better than being their doormat. After a few days, Craig came over to Amanda's apartment. She probably thought he was there to make up, but no, he broke up with her. He said he couldn't be with someone who would treat their own brother that way, especially someone who had supported them so much. He said it made him question her values and who she truly was. Amanda lost her indeclasse and contacted me crying and shouting from yet another new number. She's had more burner phones than a drug dealer at this point. She said I'd wrecked everything, that Craig broke up with her because of me, that her life was falling apart, and it was all my fault. I laughed and replied, "No, sis. Craig ended his relationship with you after discovering your true identity. I just stopped helping you hide it." She threatened to tell everyone that I had sexually assaulted her in high school, that she would report my business to the Better Business Bureau for fraud, and that everyone would know what a terrible brother I was. "Go ahead," I told her. "Tell everyone your brother is a monster because he checks notes, paid for your education while you tried to conceal his existence. See how that works out for you." Then she went back to begging, crying about how she couldn't afford law school without me, how she'd have to drop out, how she'd lose all of her friends, and how her life would end. "Guess you should have thought about that before you decided I was too embarrassing to acknowledge," I responded. Then I disconnected. After Craig dumped her, Amanda had a complete mental breakdown, according to Sarah. She began showing up at our parents' house at random hours, crying about how her life had ended. She had apparently told all her law school friends that her boyfriend was going to help her with tuition, so when he dumped her instead, she was completely screwed. The deadline for the tuition payment was approaching, and she still hadn't figured out what to do. She tried applying for emergency loans, but guess what? Those take time to process, and she left it way too late. Plus, she'd need a cosigner, and our parents' credit is a mess. I wonder why they keep trying to live beyond their means. Sarah texted me. 911, Amanda just posted on Facebook that she's heading to your shop to make you face what you're doing to her. She appears unstable? I barely had time to warn my guys before she blasted through the door like a tornado in designer clothes, hair all messy, mascara running, full crazy ex-girlfriend energy, except she was my sister. "How could you do this to me?" She screamed in front of my entire staff and about 3 customers, "I'm your sister, you're meant to look after me." I attempted to encourage her to go outside or at least lower her voice, but she seemed determined to cause a disturbance. "You are ruining my life," she screamed, "all because your delicate feelings were harmed. You are so selfish." One of my clients, a sweet old lady who had been with us for years, stood up. "Young lady," she asked, "is this the brother who has been paying for your education?" Amanda turned around as if she'd been smacked. "That's none of your business." "Well," the elderly lady added, "you just made it everyone's business by storming in here shouting. And, based on what I've heard, you excluded your brother from Christmas because you were ashamed of his profession, but you still expect him to pay for your education. That's known as biting the hand that feeds you, in my hometown." The look on Amanda's face, she genuinely didn't know how to handle someone calling her out on her BS who wasn't family, but she recovered fast and shifted to crying, like full-blown theatrical sobbing. "You don't understand," she cried. "He is doing this to punish me. He's attempting to harm my future because he's envious of my achievement." I couldn't help laughing. "What success, Amanda? The success of convincing your partner to dump you? The success of maybe having to drop out of law school? The success of embarrassing yourself in front of my staff and customers? At the very least, I'm making an effort to establish myself." She shot out, not just playing with pipes all day like some. She had to stop herself, perhaps realizing she was about to degrade plumbing in front of a group of plumbers. My senior employee, Mike, went up, and heck, a large fellow who's been with me since I started the business, said, "Ma'am," in a dead serious tone, "I think you should leave now. For the past 5 years, your brother's pipe playing has provided for my family's needs. It paid for my children's braces and my wife's automobile, and it appears to have paid for your law school as well. So maybe offer some respect." Amanda looked around and realized she wasn't receiving the reaction she had hoped for. Everyone was staring at her as if she were insane, which, to be honest, she was. She tried one more time. "Okay, I'll tell everyone what type of brother you really are. I'll post about it all over social media." Go ahead, I urged. Make sure you mention the bit where you had me banned from Christmas because you were embarrassed by my employment but still expected me to pay your tuition. I'm sure that will bring you a lot of sympathy. She stormed off after that, but not before knocking down our sign and clipboard and kicking a display of business cards off the counter. Very mature, sis? The elderly customer approached me after Amanda left, stroked my arm, and said, "You know, my late husband was a plumber. Put all 3 of our children through college. They never once expressed embarrassment about what he performed for a living." Then Mom looked me straight in the eyes and said, "You're doing the right thing, honey." Sometimes family members have to learn the hard way that respect is a two-way street. After that scene, I had to sit down with my staff and explain the situation, and they were remarkably nice about it. Mike even remarked that his family's Thanksgiving drama was boring in contrast. So after the whole explosion at my business, Amanda decided to go nuclear. She started calling every single member of our extended family, telling them this sob story about how her cruel brother was attempting to ruin her future out of spite. But here's the thing about family drama. Everyone loves to get involved, but no one wants to actually assist. The first one was Aunt Karen. Yes, that's her name, and yes, she lives up to it. Who got me all wound up about family obligations and how I was selfish. This is the same aunt who borrowed $5,000 from me 3 years ago for emergency dental work and never paid it back. The conversation went as follows. "How could you do this to your sister?" she demanded. "She's striving to improve herself." "Funny," I responded. "I do not recall you agreeing to assist pay for her law school. You still owe me for your teeth, by the way." There is no more sound. That's different," she sputtered. "How dare you bring it up?" "Is it different?" I inquired. "Because, from where I stand, this entire family enjoys talking about helping each other until it comes time to actually help. Then suddenly, everyone goes quiet." She hung up on me after that. I guess the reality hurts more than those teeth did. Then there was Uncle Steve, my father's brother. He's this wannabe big shot who's always boasting about his investment portfolio but never has money when the restaurant bill arrives, and he tried to lecture me about family investments. "Think of it as an investment in your sister's future," he told me. "When she's a successful lawyer, she'll be able to help you." I laughed so hard at it. "Can you help me?" She couldn't even bear to have me for Christmas dinner because I'm a plumber. "But okay, tell me more about how she'll help me once she's successful." "Well," he said, "maybe you could help her finish school, and she could pay you back." "Great idea," I remarked. "Why don't you lend her the money then? You're always raving about your fantastic investments. Here's an opportunity to invest in my family." He suddenly had to leave. It's amazing how this keeps happening. The best part was that no one who called to guilt trip me offered to really help Amanda themselves. They all had opinions on what I should do with my money, but their own wallets remained firmly closed. I'm done with her, and I'll keep you all posted if anything occurs. Final update, my sister had me excluded from Christmas because I'm only a plumber, so I took away her law school funds. Hey everyone, I figured I'd post one last update because so many people have been messaging me asking what happened. I heard from a mutual friend that my sister showed up at her ex-boyfriend's house uninvited and tried to talk to Craig's parents. She told them this whole sob story about how she was about to lose everything and needed help, but she didn't mention hiding me because I'm a plumber. Craig was obviously present and gave them the complete truth, but his father, the judge, appeared to glance at her and say, "Young lady, if you're trying to be a lawyer, you should know that attempting to manipulate people by telling half-truths is not a good start to your career." In the end, she had to drop out of law school because she couldn't get private loans without a cosigner, and no one in the family was willing to cosign after what happened. When Grandma got involved and told them they should be ashamed of themselves, even my parents stopped asking for my help. Amanda is now working as a paralegal at a small law company. According to Sarah, she claims it is only temporary until she can return to law school, but we all know that is unlikely. As for me, business is stronger than ever, and I've actually grown to 2 more trucks and employed 4 new workers. I still meet up with Craig and his uncle Mike for beers on occasion, and it turns out we get along really well when there's no family turmoil involved. My parents tried to reconcile around Thanksgiving, but only because they needed help with their mortgage. I declined and told them that maybe they should ask their successful lawyer daughter for help. Oh wait, funny thing is, I actually feel better now that everything's out in the open. No more pretending, no more being the family ATM, no more walking on eggshells about my job, just me, my successful business, and my actual friends who don't give a can what I do for a living. Thank you for your support, Reddit. Sometimes you need strangers on the internet to confirm you're not insane for standing up for yourself. Edit. Holy, this blew out. Thanks for all the accolades, and to everyone who DM'd me about needing a plumber in my region. Sorry, I'm trying to remain anonymous here. Edit 2. To everyone who says I ruined my sister's life, she did it herself. I simply stopped paying it. After 20 years of caring for my wife's daughter, I was abandoned by her at the wedding when she chose her biological father over me. I've been married to Sarah for more than 20 years. When we met, she was a single mother of a 5-year-old child named Emma. Emma was a bright-eyed, inquisitive little girl with a laugh that could brighten up any room. The first time I saw her, she was chasing a paper airplane in the park, clutching Sarah's hand tightly as they moved toward me. Something in that instant told me they were the future. Sarah was open about her past right from the start. Emma's biological father, Mark, had always been untrustworthy, full of hollow promises and transient appearances. He would call on birthdays, drop off cheap gifts, and then go. Emma was usually excited when Daddy arrived, despite Sarah's efforts to keep her expectations in check. When Sarah and I became serious, she made it obvious that Emma was her top priority. I totally accepted it. What I didn't expect was how much I'd come to love her. It didn't happen right away, but every "I love you, Dad," and every small sketch with my name misspelled eventually won me over. I was present when she learnt to ride a bike after numerous falls and scraped knees. I was there when she developed a high temperature in the middle of the night, cuddling her while Sarah ran for a thermometer. I helped her memorize her poem for her first school recital. On the big day, she shook behind the curtain but caught my gaze in the crowd before she began, needing reassurance that I was present. I always was. Mark, on the other hand, was merely a background character. He made huge promises such as, "Next summer I'll take you to the beach," or "I'll buy you that bike you want," but never followed through. Emma used to cry when those promises broke apart, and I would pick up the pieces. I never wanted to be the reason she stopped believing in her father. As she grew older, our friendship grew stronger. I was the one who attended her school meetings, helped her choose her graduation gown, and cheered her on from the bleachers during her games. She called me Dad, and even though I wasn't her biological father, I could see she meant it. That's why what occurred next devastated me. I wholeheartedly supported Emma's decision to attend college. I paid for much of her tuition, books, and even her little apartment rent. It was a financial cost, but I did not mind. I wanted her to have the opportunities I never had. Mark, as always, was inconsistent. He would occasionally call to say, "Your dad is proud of you," but he never contributed monetarily or actively participated in her life. Emma went up to me after the graduation ceremony, tears in her eyes. "Thank you for everything, Dad. I couldn't have done it without you." At that point, every sacrifice seemed worthwhile. So when Emma announced her wedding to Andrew, I was ecstatic. I imagined escorting her down the aisle, a symbolic moment that reflected everything we had gone through. I never stated it aloud, but I assumed that honor was mine. After all, I had been there for her at every milestone. The weeks leading up to the wedding were full with anticipation. Emma discussed her outfit, the flowers, and the music. As always, I offered my assistance, paying for a portion of the reception, donating to her attire, and covering additional expenses. I never anticipated anything in return, other than to be recognized as an important part of her day. Then the invitation arrived. I opened it with a smile, expecting to find my name in a particular place. Instead, it was only a formal guest list. My name wasn't really significant. Worse, Emma had selected Mark to accompany her down the aisle. At first, I assumed it was an error, but when I asked her about it, her remark hit me like a blow in the belly. "There's only one biological father, and I've always wanted to give him this moment." I can't express how it felt to have years of love, sacrifice, and effort rejected as nothing. But the worst part wasn't her choice. It was how nonchalantly she said it, as if she'd never considered choosing me. Her wedding day was one of the most embarrassing experiences of my life. I arrived early in a fitted suit, sat quietly among the guests, and watched Mark escort Emma down the aisle. During the remarks, I waited for someone to acknowledge me. Nobody did. I was invisible. Something inside of me snapped that day. The part of me that had always been willing to give up simply shut down. I didn't realize it at the time, but that moment signaled the start of a shift that would change everything. That moment, watching Emma come down the aisle on Mark's arm, was etched in my memory. She was gorgeous, as any bride should be, yet the vision left me bitter. Not because I didn't want her to be happy, but because I recognized in that moment that I was no longer her priority. Emma and Andrew embarked on a lavish honeymoon at a seaside resort with stunning views and first-rate amenities the week after their wedding. I did not ask many questions about it. I couldn't bring myself to talk about something that was the breaking point in our relationship. What I hadn't expected was what happened when Emma returned. She barely had time to unpack before contacting me. Her tone was light, as if nothing had occurred. She spoke about the beaches and the surprise meal Andrew had planned under the sky. I listened silently, answering briefly and fighting to maintain my composure. Then the talk went the way I should have expected. "Dad," she stated. The familiarity of that word wounded harder than I'd like to acknowledge. "I need a favor." They had some unexpected honeymoon expenses and were running low on cash. Could I help with the cost? For a moment, I was speechless. She asked so casually and confidently, as if she expected me to answer yes, like I had always done. I was the one who corrected things, provided, and made selfless sacrifices for her. But this time, something inside me resisted. Maybe it was wounded pride, or maybe it was the weight of years of neglect. All I know is that for the first time, I did not feel compelled to say yes. "I'm sorry, Emma," I replied, holding my voice steady while my heart hammered. "I can't help you this time." There was silence. I could image her expression of confusion. "But you've always helped before," she finally remarked, her voice filled with skepticism. I took a deep breath. "Maybe you should ask Mark. He's your real father, isn't he? Maybe he can help." There was another long pause, followed by a whispered, "I understand," before she hung up. There was no dispute or fury, only an abrupt conclusion that left an empty space in my chest. Later, Sarah confronted me. She called me heartless and claimed I couldn't simply abandon Emma when she needed me. I told her it was not about money, but about respect. I was there for her for over 20 years, Sarah. And when she had the chance to acknowledge that, she chose to act like it wasn't enough. I can't keep being her backup plan whenever things don't go her way. Sarah did not comprehend. To her, blood always came first, even if it had just made empty promises. The chat ended in silence, but something altered between us. An invisible wall appeared where none had before existed. Emma has not contacted me since. Sarah told me shortly after that call that Andrew was furious with me for abandoning Emma in a difficult situation. Mark had apparently vanished, with no calls, messages, or other indications. I suppose Emma was now realizing the truth, but it didn't erase what she had done or how she had made me feel. That night, alone in the living room, I replayed every moment I had spent with Emma, every time she smiled and called me Dad. And then I knew something. I'd always assumed the title was a decision, a sign that I'd earned my place in her life. But now I wonder whether it was just a convenient word for her, something she said when it suited her. I'm not sure if I'll ever get over this, but one thing is certain. This time, I won't be the one who keeps giving. To be honest, I don't think I have anything left to give. 3 months have passed after the wedding, and despite my best efforts to distance myself, drama continues to find me. Sarah is continually trying to mend things between Emma and me, gazing at me with a mix of disappointment and imploring, as if waiting for me to give in and return to being the man who never said no. But she doesn't realize, or refuses to accept, that something within me altered that day. I can't simply go back to how things were. Since the call in which I declined to pay for Emma's honeymoon, our relationship has entirely vanished. She hasn't contacted me, and while that stung at first, it now feels like relief. There will be no more solicitations for money disguised as casual check-ins. What surprised me was how rapidly issues arose in her marriage. Sarah, of course, remained in constant communication with Emma and casually mentioned it over dinner one night. "Emma and Andrew are struggling financially," she moaned loudly. "Andrew lost his job, and they're having trouble paying rent." I kept eating, knowing what was coming. Sarah continued, "Don't you think we should help them? She's our daughter after all." I sat down with my fork and took a long breath. "I'm not her father anymore, Sarah. According to Emma, that role belongs to Mark. So if she needs help, she should ask him." Sarah glanced at me as if I'd just said something terrible. "How can you be so cold? She's always counted on you. You can't turn your back on her now." I laughed bitterly. Cold? Cold is what she did to me at her wedding, because honestly, that's exactly how it felt. Cold and invisible, like I never spent 2 decades being the one who was there for her. If Mark is her father for the big moments, then he can be her father in the difficult ones too. This concluded our conversation. Sarah stormed away, carrying her plate to the sink. That night, we slept silently, with our backs to each other. It pained that this was damaging our relationship, but I couldn't keep being the man who gave and gave while receiving nothing in return. Despite everything, Emma reached out quickly, albeit not explicitly. A week later, I received a message from Andrew. He wrote, short but desperate, "Hey, it's Andrew, Emma's husband. I need to talk to you about something important. Do you have time?" I didn't immediately respond. I left the message there as a reminder of how dramatically things had changed. I read it several times, knowing exactly what he wanted: money. There was always money. I eventually decided to hear him out. I had nothing to lose. We met in a neighborhood cafe. Andrew was already there, nervously tapping his foot and looking at the untouched coffee. I sat down silently, expecting him to speak first. "Thanks for coming," he finally murmured, his tone lacking sincerity. It seemed more like an obligation. "I know things have been tense between you and Emma, but we're going through a difficult time and I was hoping you could help." There it was, the expected request. I kept my expression neutral. "What do you need?" I inquired, despite the fact that I already knew. Andrew groaned and stared at his coffee, as if looking for the proper words. "Emma and I have been struggling financially since the honeymoon. I recently lost my job, and we are now behind on rent. If we don't pay in 2 weeks, we will be evicted." I nodded carefully, allowing his words to sink in before asking the one question he clearly hadn't expected. "Have you asked Mark?" Andrew looked up, puzzled. "Mark?" "No, we haven't talked to him. Emma thought you might be able to help. You've always been there for her." I smiled, but it wasn't a friendly one. It was bitter. "Ironic." "Exactly," I murmured, leaning forward. "And yet, when she had to choose, she picked Mark. So no, Andrew, I won't be helping this time. Maybe it's time for Mark to finally step up for once." Andrew tried to argue that it wouldn't be fair if they were evicted. That it wasn't only about Emma, but also about him. I raised a hand to stop him. "This conversation is over," I stated firmly. "I wish you both the best, but I can't keep solving your problems." I stood up, leaving him to his cold coffee and frustration. When I arrived home, Sarah was waiting for me, like if she knew what had happened. I didn't give her any specifics because she didn't need them. She could tell I'd declined to help. Emma and Andrew have since stopped trying. Sarah is still unhappy, but she has stopped pushing me to give in. But something tells me that this is not over. When a castle collapses, there is always more rubble to come. 6 months have passed since the wedding, and to be honest, they have felt weirdly liberated. I've held steadfast in my choice not to get involved in Emma and Andrew's troubles, even if it means dealing with Sarah's persistent resentment. She does not say it directly, but I can see it in her eyes. She hasn't forgiven me for what she considers a betrayal. No matter how many times I explain that this is not about money, but about respect, she either doesn't get it or refuses to. But the space between Emma and me has provided unexpected solace. For the first time in years, I am free of the burden of always being the one to keep everything together. I've refocused on myself, taken up old hobbies like woodworking, and spent more time with friends, things I'd neglected for far too long. I felt awful at first for taking this space for myself, but now I see it as vital. Still, the drama has not subsided. Sarah told me a few weeks ago that Emma and Andrew had finally been evicted. They couldn't come up with enough money to catch up on rent, and their landlord lost patience. They're now staying with Andrew's mother in a tight apartment that barely fits 2 people, let alone a married couple. Sarah was outraged as she told me this. "This wouldn't have happened if you had helped them," she added, her tone heavy with the now familiar blame. I did not bother answering. Whatever I said, Sarah would always perceive me as the villain responsible for Emma's problems. What she doesn't know is that deep down, I know I did the right thing. Emma chose to throw me aside, and now she has to deal with the repercussions. Sarah finds it ironic that Mark has been absolutely absent during this. He didn't even answer when Emma asked for aid. It's not surprising, given his track record of unreliability. But I find it odd that, despite Emma's efforts to elevate him, he is nowhere to be found when she needs him the most. Sarah told me something a few days ago when she was making dinner, and it almost made me chuckle. Emma says Mark promised to help her find a new place to live, but he still hasn't followed through. He says he's waiting for his finances to stabilize. I arched an eyebrow, staring at her in amazement. And Emma still believes him? After a lifetime of broken promises, she still believes him? I inquired, not angry, but really curious. Sarah sighed and looked at me with despair. He's her father, she stated simply, as if this explained everything. That exchange stuck in my memory for years. I had attempted to replace the vacuum Mark had left in Emma's life, but now I wondered if it had all been in vain. Perhaps biology has always been more important to her than her deeds. Perhaps I was never competing with Mark's presence, but with the mere fact that he existed. Emma finally contacted me around a week ago. Surprisingly, it was not about money. She sent a message indicating she wanted to meet and speak. I was hesitant to respond for a long time, but curiosity eventually won out. We met at a park that she used to frequent when she was younger. Emma was already there, sitting on a bench and nervously fidgeting with her hands. When I approached, she rose up and gave me a cautious hug. One that did not feel sincere, but which I accepted out of politeness. We sat for a few minutes in awkward silence. Then she began speaking, but not about why she had summoned me there. Instead, she talked about how difficult it was to live with Andrew's mother, the strain in her marriage, and how much she missed her own space. I listened without interrupting. I could see she had a lot to unload. She finally came to the point. "Dad," she murmured, a word that once meant a lot to me but now feels hollow. "I know I've disappointed you. I know the wedding hurt you, and I don't think I realized how much until it was too late." I waited, allowing her to continue. Inside, I felt a range of feelings, including disbelief, sadness, and lingering bitterness. Emma took a big breath before saying, "I just want to say I'm sorry for how things turned out. I never meant to make you feel replaced." "But you did," I said calmly and firmly. "Not just at the wedding, Emma. Every time you ignored everything I did for you, every time you chose to see Mark as something he never was. You say you didn't want me to feel replaced, but honestly, I don't think I was ever in that place to begin with." Emma looked down, clearly startled by my remarks. Perhaps she expected me to simply take her apologies and go back to the way things had been, but that wasn't an option anymore. Certain things, once broken, cannot be fixed. The conversation came to an end shortly thereafter. As we said our goodbyes, she told me she hoped we might repair our connection over time. I didn't answer, not because I didn't want it to happen, but because I wasn't sure it could. Emma didn't simply break my heart, she also shattered something deeper, my faith in her. Update: I did something that Sarah and Emma will never forgive me for, and I'm not sure whether I should even seek forgiveness. My relationship with Sarah has deteriorated beyond what I could have imagined during the last year, following the wedding. What began as an emotional distance has grown into an insurmountable divide. We no longer feel the love, bond, or respect that we once had. We still share a house, but not our lives. Since the wedding, there has been no intimacy. At first, I assumed it was a momentary reaction to stress, but as the months went, I realized Sarah was more than upset. She was bitter. She blamed me for Emma's pain, and this anger permeated every aspect of our marriage. We used to spend our nights talking or watching movies, but now they are silent. Every time I try to reach out, she pulls back, creating a barrier between us. In the midst of this desolation, Sophie, Sarah's best friend, joined my life. She had always been Emma's delightful aunt, bringing her lavish gifts and telling humorous stories. However, after the wedding, something changed. She began phoning more frequently, checking up on me. At first, I assumed she was attempting to help Sarah and me reconcile. But as time passed, I understood it was more than that. Sophie was the only person who really listened. She told me something no one else had. That I was correct. That my feelings were genuine. That I had been treated unfairly. And that Sarah was being unkind to me. I grew to look forward to our chats. She did not perceive me as the villain in this scenario. I will not suggest that this was planned, since it was not. It just happened, like a river discovering a new route. One night, after another lengthy conversation, we sat in silence, just looking at each other. We had discussed everything. How I felt invisible in my own home, how Sarah had become chilly, and how my life seemed to be crumbling apart. Sophie suddenly seized my hand and said something that left me speechless. "You deserve to be happy, and they aren't letting you." I'm not sure what made me lean in, her voice, the way she looked at me, but before I knew it, I was kissing her, and she didn't move away. That night, I did not go home. I spent the hours with Sophie, talking and laughing, allowing months of repressed feelings to surface. For the first time in years, I felt seen. I felt wanted. Most significantly, I felt understood. I know I'm doing something wrong, yet I don't regret it. Sophie has been my sanctuary, someone who actually sees me. I found with her what I had lost with Sarah: connection. Sarah suspects something. She observes me when I arrive home late or leave to answer messages, but she has not confronted me. Sophie too experiences guilt, but neither of us regrets our actions. I know this cannot endure. When Sarah finds out, there is no turning back. But for the time being, I don't feel alone. Final update. 2 years have gone. Looking back, it seems like a faraway storm, yet the wounds linger. I've rebuilt my life, but I'm not sure if I can ever reverse the harm. Sarah and Emma cut me out totally, which freed me. When I eventually admitted, Sarah's reaction was even more strong than I had anticipated. She confronted me before I could respond. "What is this? I've seen the way you've changed. Tell me the truth," I said. "Sophie and we've been seeing each other." She was there for me when no one else was. Sarah's expression shifted from disbelief to wrath. Then followed the words that still haunt me. So all of it, everything we built, meant nothing to you? I stood there, speechless. All I had done was try to keep my family together, but I had failed. Sarah, I replied, my voice quivering. While you were trying to save Emma, I lost myself, and you didn't even notice. She yelled so loudly that it hurt. What you've done is unforgivable. How could you destroy our family? Emma walked in. She already knew. Her voice was icy. I thought you were better than this, but you never cared, did you? You just wanted to be the hero, and look at what you've done. That's not true, I replied, frightened. You pushed me away. You chose Mark, and when you needed something, I was just supposed to fix it. But when I gave you everything, it was never enough. Was it enough? Sarah cried. That doesn't justify this betrayal. Clara, let him go. And with that, they urged me to leave and never contact them again. It stung, but I felt relieved. There was nothing more to save. I relocated to a little flat. The divorce procedure was arduous, but the legal struggle was not the most painful part. It was realizing that the life I had built was over. Sophie was there for me throughout it all, providing comfort and motivation. She did not excuse my mistakes, but she also did not criticize me. Months later, as I was finally getting my life back together, I received a message from Emma. Dad, I know I hurt you. I know I failed you, but you will always be my father. I'm sorry. I know things will never be the same, but I will always love you. I did not respond right away. The wounds were still too deep. Maybe one day I'll find peace, but for now, I'm moving on, regardless of what I've left behind. I discovered that my stepdaughter had been manipulated by her biological father into investing her tuition money in a fake startup project. Why don't you just disappear? My stepdaughter said during a fight. Her mother joined in. We'd be better off without you. I didn't say anything, I had just packed my suitcases. This morning, my phone exploded with 13 missed calls. Something seemed strange when I strolled into our living room. The house was abnormally silent, but that wasn't all. My gaze swept over the room, attempting to determine what was wrong. Then it struck me. All of our family photos looked different. I took a step closer to the enormous frame above the fireplace, which was from our trip to Yellowstone last year. The photo was present, but I wasn't. Every photo of me had been painstakingly erased, creating embarrassing gaps in family memories spanning the previous 3 years. I was standing there, my coffee cup becoming cold, when I heard Stella's upstairs door softly close. My stepdaughter's footsteps stopped at the top of the stairs. She had obviously seen I was awake. After a brief pause, she walked down, phone in hand, purposefully avoiding eye contact as she headed toward the kitchen. Morning, I said, my tone calm. The hush that followed was thick with intention. 3 years. That was how long I'd been in Stella's life. 3 years of gradually establishing trust, of movie nights and math homework assistance, of attempting to be present without going too far. At the age of 16, she began to drift away. I expected ordinary teenage rebellion, but this seemed different. It began last week, when I offered to assist her with her chemistry project. She'd been grappling with the subject, and I figured it didn't matter what I thought. Her remark was like a slap. Stop pretending you care about my grades. You're not my real dad. I'd heard variants of that before, but something about her tone was different, sharp and intentional. My wife, Delilah, was in the kitchen and must have heard, but she did not say anything. That quiet felt like taking sides. The tension grew over the week. Small things. Dishes left in the sink, with pointed looks. Doors close a little too harshly. Conversations halted when I entered the rooms. Delilah also became distant, avoiding my attempts to clarify what was going on. She's just being a teenager, Thomas. Don't make it about you. But everything burst last night. Stella was texting during supper, which goes against our customary norms. When I gently reminded her, she threw down her phone. God, why are you always policing everything I do? Why can't you just leave me alone? Stella, I said. I'm just trying to what? Play dad? I already have one. She stood up, the chair scratching against the floor. Why don't you just disappear? Nobody asked you to try so hard. It's pathetic. I looked at Delilah, not sure what I was expecting. Support? Mediation? Instead, she placed her fork down and calmly murmured, maybe we'd all be better off if you did. The words hung in the air, like smoke. 3 years of memories flew through my mind. The day Stella first laughed at one of my dad jokes, the night she called me in tears after her first boyfriend broke up with her, and Delilah's proud smile when Stella requested me, not her mother, to help her pick out her prom outfit. I stood up slowly, my food half finished. Okay, I replied simply. Okay, what? Stella demanded. But something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty, perhaps. If that's how you both feel, okay? I strolled upstairs to our bedroom and took out my old duffel bag. I could hear them whispering downstairs, but no one came up while I gathered enough clothes for a few days. I saw that my hands were not shaking. I felt strangely relaxed. Stella had already left, most likely to her room, when I arrived. Delilah stood at the kitchen doorway, arms crossed. So you're just leaving? That's your solution? You said you'd be better off, I responded, looking for my keys and wallet. I'm respecting that. That's not, I didn't mean. She paused. Pride, wrath, or something else kept her from saying what she wanted to say. I took up my purse. I'll be at Ryan's. I'll figure out something more permanent soon. I hesitated at the doorway. You know, when Stella said those things before, it hurt. But hearing you agree? That broke something, Del. I drove to Ryan's apartment in solitude. He looked at me and immediately set up his guest room. That's the type of friend he is. I turned off my phone and took a sleeping pill from my emergency travel box. This morning, I awoke to find sunlight flowing through unfamiliar drapes. When I eventually turned on my phone, it was filled with notifications. 13 missed calls, 8 from Delilah, 3 from Stella, and 2 from Quinn, my sister. 27 text messages, 4 voicemails, I have not listened to them yet. I'm sitting in Ryan's guest room, watching the morning traffic below, and thinking about the empty places in our family portraits. Maybe they were always there, but I didn't want to see them. My phone vibrates again. It's Stella. After everything that has transpired, I find myself staring at her name on the screen, wondering what is so necessary right now. But I am not ready. Not yet. Walking away isn't always the hardest part, it's deciding whether to walk back. Update 1. First and foremost, I'd like to thank everyone who left positive comments on my previous post. I did not expect such a large response. To answer the most common questions, yes, I have read the messages. No, I have not responded to any of them yet. And yes, I am still at Ryan's. This morning began like the others, me pretending to focus on work while glancing at my phone, debating if I should break the stillness. Then Ryan dropped a bomb during breakfast. Miles is back in town, he announced, sliding his phone across the table. On Facebook, there was a photo of Stella's biological father posted at a local restaurant. 2 weeks ago? The same Miles who hasn't paid child support for 3 years. The same Miles who had missed Stella's last 4 birthdays. Suddenly, everything made sense. I scrolled through my messages again. Delilah's communications have evolved, from angry to, very mature, Thomas. Instead of talking, run away. To the concerned, please let us know you're fine. To something more complicated. Her most recent read, there's something you need to know. It's Stella, please call. Quinn arrived about lunchtime, ready with coffee and that no-nonsense expression she gives when she's about to meddle in my affairs. You look like hell, she said, sliding into Ryan's couch. Thanks. Always good to see you too, sis. She did not smile. I ran into Stella at the mall yesterday. That caught my interest. How is she? Meeting Miles. For coffee? She didn't see me, Quinn said, observing my reaction closely. She looked hopeful. You know that look she gets, like when she's trying not to get too excited about something? I understood exactly what she meant. It's the same expression Stella had when she was accepted to the summer camp last year, as if she was terrified to believe something good was happening. Did you know he's been messaging her for months? Quinn asked. Promising to make things right this time? My stomach turned. I checked Stella's Instagram, which I rarely do. Her most recent post was a snapshot of her and Miles. Caption. Real family time. Her friends' replies were loaded with heart emoticons, and none of them were aware of the background. Ryan, who had been quietly listening, eventually piped up. Remember what happened last time he showed up? Stella was 13. I remembered. Miles had arrived with huge promises, stayed for 2 weeks, and then vanished again. Stella remained in bed for several days afterward. Delilah and I spent months regaining her trust and assuring her that she was enough. That she deserved more. As if on cue, my phone lit up with a text message from Delilah. He's asking her to move in with him. She's actually considering it. Please, Thomas. I know you're angry with me, but she needs you. I began typing multiple responses. I deleted them all. What could I possibly say? Sorry, You told me to disappear, but now you need me to reappear? The entire event seemed like a terrible joke. Then followed another notification. Stella's latest Instagram post, a photo of college brochures scattered across her bed. The headline reads, "Big change is coming. Sometimes you have to choose your real path." Miles said those precise words 3 years ago, right before he traveled across the country to pursue his true passion and stopped returning Stella's calls. Quinn must have noticed something on my face. "What are you thinking?" I glanced at my phone, reading Delilah's message. Then I quietly said, "I'm thinking about the day I married Delilah. Remember what Stella said in her speech? How sometimes family finds you when you're not looking for it." Quinn nodded. "And now," I sighed. "Now she's posting about her real family and her real path while Miles plays Father of the Year. He's got her convinced." My phone began to ring, and I came to a stop. Unknown number. "Thomas, this is Miss Anderson from Riverside High. I'm Stella's guidance counselor. I know this is unusual, but I need to speak with you about some concerning changes in Stella's academic plans and recent behavior. Would you be able to come in tomorrow morning?" I consented to the meeting, my thoughts racing. Stella had maintained straight A's since freshman year, anxious to attend a good institution. What might have changed? Quinn and Ryan both looked at me expectantly as I hung up. "So?" Quinn asked. "I think it's time to stop being silent." I took up my phone and eventually opened Stella's voicemail. Her voice was low, unlike her normal assurance. "I know you probably hate me now, and I get it. I need to tell you something. About why I said those things. About Miles. Please call me back." Something in her voice reminded me of the 13-year-old girl who would check the mailbox every day, hoping for a letter that never arrived. I have a meeting with the guidance counselor tomorrow at 9 o'clock. After that, I believe it is time for some honest conversations. Because disappearing occasionally allows you to view things more clearly from a distance. The school's number is still shown on my screen. Next to it is a text notification from Miles to our family group chat, which I am still a part of. Great news! Big announcement at dinner tomorrow night. I have a feeling I know what the announcement will be. And I will not let history repeat itself. Update 2. I spent the last hour figuring out how to write this update. The meeting with Miss Anderson showed something I had not expected. And what happened next? Well, let me start at the beginning. I arrived at Riverside High early and observed students rushing to the first period. A couple of Stella's classmates knew me, and their quick glances and murmurs informed me that stories about my absence had already circulated. Miss Anderson did not waste time after I sat down. "Stella submitted paperwork to withdraw from her advanced placement classes yesterday," she explained, sliding a form across her desk. "She's also dropping out of the French club and student council." When I asked why, she said she's transferring schools next semester. My chest tightened. Stella battled hard to get into these programs. She had been counting on extracurricular activities to help her college applications. "There's more," Miss Anderson added. "Last week, she asked me to send her transcripts to 3 different schools. All in California." She halted and attentively observed me. "The same city where Miles recently purchased property." That's when things started falling into place. I brought out my phone and showed her Miles' huge announcement text. "Let me guess. He's opening a new business out there." She nodded. Stella mentioned something about a startup. Said her father needs family investors to get it off the ground. The usual, nauseous feeling returned. The same one I received 3 years ago, when Miles persuaded Delilah to lend him money for a sure-thing business endeavor. We never saw the money again. I left the school and drove directly to our house. Delilah's automobile was in the driveway. I could see her pacing in the kitchen with a phone to her ear. She saw me and ran to answer the door before I could knock. "He asked her for money," she replied promptly. "Her college fund. He's been filling her head with promises about this tech startup. Saying that if she invests now, she'll make enough to pay for any college she wants." "Where is she?" "Coffee with Miles." Again. Delilah's voice broke. I tried telling her it's a scam, but she accused me of being jealous. That he's finally stepping up. She said at least he believes in her dreams. I sat down at the kitchen counter, the identical location where everything collapsed a week ago. "Why didn't you tell me he was back?" "I tried to handle it myself." She exhaled. "I wondered if I could keep them apart." She shook her head. "Then you and Stella got into an argument and she said terrible things, and I just panicked. I sided with her because I was terrified not to. She'd go all in for him." Before I could react, the front door opened. Stella walked in. She froze when she saw me. She looked different. Makeup applied carefully. Stella was dressed in an expensive jacket Miles had most likely purchased for her. But her eyes were crimson. "What are you doing here?" she asked. However, her voice lacked its typical sharpness. "Are you dropping your AP courses, really?" I kept my tone gentle. "What happened to Stanford?" "Plans change," she murmured, avoiding my gaze. "Dad says." "Miles says," I said gently. Something flickered on her face. "He has connections out there. The startup is guaranteed to." As if the classic car dealership were guaranteed? Or a food truck franchise? I took out my laptop and opened the documents that I had spent the morning gathering. I did some digging. Want to know Miles' current company registration status, or his credit report? Or about the 3 ongoing cases from his previous guaranteed investment opportunity? Stella's hands trembled as she grabbed the laptop. With each click and document, the careful facade cracked a little more. When she reached the lawsuit filed by his prior stepdaughter's grandmother to collect college funds he had borrowed, the first tear flowed. "He said..." She swallowed hard. "He said he had changed. He wants to make up for lost time. That we could be a true family if..." She paused and looked up at me. "A photo album. He stated I needed to prove I was choosing him. That you were the reason he remained away. You took his place." "Oh, sweetie," Delilah approached, but Stella stepped back. "I knew," she said quietly. "I guess I knew. But I desperately wanted to believe." Her phone vibrated. Miles sent another SMS. She stared at it for a long time before shutting it off entirely. "I have to go," she murmured quickly, rushing for the stairs. I need to think." We let her leave. Sometimes the most generous thing you can do is provide space. Hours have passed. Delilah and I talked, truly talked, for the first time in weeks. Regarding worries and blunders. About Stella, Miles. About us. Around midnight, I was preparing to return to Ryan's when my phone lit up with a text from Stella. "I messed up. Everything's messed up. Can we talk? I mean, really talk? Not about Miles or money or anything, just, remember when we used to have ice cream after my dancing classes and you'd let me rant about school drama? Could we do that? I know I don't deserve it, but I'm composing this from my car, which is parked outside our local ice cream shop. It's supposedly closed, but the owner recognizes us. We have been coming here for 3 years. He is staying open late just for us. Stella just arrived in her mother's automobile. She's sitting there, probably gathering up the nerve to enter. Exactly as I am. Sometimes the most difficult conversations begin with the slightest steps. Or, in this case, mint chocolate chip ice cream at midnight. Final update. That night in the ice cream shop altered everything. Stella spoke for hours. About Miles' manipulation. Her anxieties and guilt. But it was something she said in passing that piqued my interest. Miles had asked Jessica to get her friend's parents to invest in his firm as well. Something clicked. I remembered the lawsuits I'd discovered, a pattern of targeting families through their children. The rage I'd been hiding now had a purpose. "You know," I explained carefully. "What he's doing isn't simply ethically wrong. It is illegal." Stella glanced up from her melting ice cream. "What do you mean?" I described securities fraud and unlawful investment techniques. Her eyes widened as she took out her phone and showed me the group conversations where Miles was directly soliciting investments from children. That night, after sending Stella off, I made some phone calls. Quinn has a friend in the SEC. Ryan knows someone in the district attorney's office. By the morning, I had a plan. Miles didn't see it coming. He was too preoccupied with his big announcement dinner, where he intended to persuade Stella to hand over her education fund. He had also invited the parents of some of her friends, adding to the list of prospective targets. The dinner was held at an expensive restaurant. Miles was in his element, discussing Silicon Valley connections and assured profits. I waited for the appetizers to arrive before rising up. "Before we continue," I said, "there are some people who'd like to join us." On cue, 2 federal agents and a state investigator entered. Miles' face changed from confident to confused, to terrified, in seconds. Miles was operating more than one fraud, it seems out. The detectives discovered 7 different fraudulent schemes in 3 jurisdictions. Every time he reconnected with Stella over the years, he would set up new victims. The classic automobile dealership that cost Delilah her funds was part of a broader scam scheme. The food truck franchise follows the same pattern. But here's the beautiful part, he'd gotten sloppy this time. He had documented everything in texts and emails to Stella, believing she would never turn against him. When she forwarded the messages to the investigators, his fate was sealed. Are the parents present at the dinner? They wore wires. Every promise, lie, and illegal investment pitch was recorded. Miles tried to run, knocking over a waiter before sprinting for the door. He took 3 steps before being stopped by security. As they led him away, he gave Stella that manipulative puppy dog expression that she had fallen for so many times. This is all a misunderstanding, sweetie. Tell them. I am your father. Stella stood up, shoulders straight. My father's right here, she said, taking my hand. And he just watched you get exactly what you deserve. The aftermath was intense. News coverage, victim statements, more families are coming forward. The investigators discovered over $2.3 million in stolen funds. Miles estimates 15 to 20 years. His startup consisted solely of a website and some stolen photos of a real tech company's office. But the true victory was not witnessing Miles' arrest. It was the brief moments that followed. Stella placed all of her photos with Miles in a box and donated them to the prosecution. Evidence, she said, with a hint of her old smile. She reapplied to her AP courses. In light of the circumstances, the school was understanding. Instead of being angry, her friends' parents formed a support group for families impacted by similar scams. Something good came from something bad. Stella asked me last night for help with her college essays. I have a pretty unique story now, she explained. How many people can write about bringing down their biological father's fraudulent empire? Delilah and I are in counseling. There is trust to rebuild and wounds to heal. But watching her meticulously place my photos back in the family albums and straighten each one, that expressed more than words could. Stella came down early this morning for breakfast. She carried an envelope with her. I found this in my room, she explained, passing it across the table. Miles asked me to send it last week. It is investment documentation for his startup. I figured you would want to add it to the evidence file. I stared at the envelope, then at her. Do you want to deliver it to the investigators together? She grinned, the genuine, unrestrained smile I had missed. Can we get ice cream afterwards? Some may argue that the vengeance was excessively severe. Whatever happens, that family is still family. However, a real family does not strive to take your future. A real family will protect you. Even if it means shielding you from other relatives. Miles' sentencing date is next month. Stella plans to read a victim impact statement. She spent weeks working on it, painstakingly rewriting each word. She requested me to review it yesterday. It needs a good ending, she went on. Something that shows I'm not just his victim anymore. I believe she's already found that ending. It's in the way she holds her head up right now. In how she assists other children in identifying similar schemes. In the college brochures on her desk. Her actual route. Not the one Miles attempted to sell her. Moving on sometimes entails ensuring that the past does not harm others. And sometimes, the finest retribution isn't simply watching someone face consequences, it is thriving despite them. We are having a family meal tonight. Only the 3 of us. Stella's making her famous pasta sauce, which she learnt while watching cooking videos with me during lockdown. Normal, boring, and wonderful. Things related to the family. Miles will have plenty of time to ponder about these things from his cell. After my father passed, my family grew distant due to our spoiled sister. Now, as I help my brother with medical bills, she demands a house. I, 36F, have 2 siblings, my brother Damon, 34M, and my sister Nancy, 28F. Simply put, Nancy was and always has been the golden kid, particularly in my mother's eyes. Dad had some wisdom. He'd periodically urge Nancy to cut it out, but he gave her far more liberty than Damon or me. Mom. Forget it. She would let Nancy get away with anything. Nancy was what my parents affectionately referred to as a surprise. She arrived considerably later than Damon and me, and I really feel the age difference contributed significantly to the special treatment. She has been handled differently since she was able to walk and talk. It's tough to pinpoint exactly how it manifested, but it was everywhere. More attention, a larger presence, constant praise, basically more of everything great. What if she misbehaved? No consequences. Mom would laugh it off like it was the cutest thing in the world. Growing up in the shadow of a beloved brother is an especially terrible experience. It reduces your self-worth. You continuously feel inadequate, as if you're always in second place, or, in my case, third. You begin to believe that no matter how hard you work, you will never be as excellent as others. The most hurtful component was Mom's outright reluctance to admit the bias. If Nancy said something cruel, and trust me, she had a skill for it, Mom would ignore our injured sentiments, stating we were overly sensitive or Nancy was joking. However, it was never a joke. You could see it in Nancy's eyes, in the small, satisfied grin she'd give. She relished making us feel small. I recall a period when I was approximately 12. I received new clothing, which I was quite excited about. Nancy took one look at me and exclaimed, "It makes you look even wider than usual." Mom just laughed and said, "Oh, Nancy, don't be silly." But I felt my face boil with humiliation. It was a consistent pattern. Our family seemed divided into two teams. Mom and Nancy against the world, and Dad, Damon, and me, who were constantly on the defensive. Even Dad wasn't a dependable teammate. He would frequently flip sides, presumably to keep the peace. So, what types of activities did Nancy do? It was a relentless assault of vitriol directed at anything and everything: my appearance, Damon's job goals, our life choices. Nothing was off bounds. She had a flair for identifying and exploiting your insecurities. The Thanksgiving situation with Damon is an excellent illustration. He was enthusiastically expressing his literary degree, his love of reading, and his desire to write. Nancy casually referred to him as an unemployed burden at the dinner table, in front of the entire extended family. The hush that ensued was deafening. Dad grumbled something about Nancy being out of line, but Mom simply smiled indulgently. Another day, after a particularly demanding week at work, I was complaining to Nancy about how fatigued I was. She pounced on that, starting into a rant about how I looked extremely haggard and how my long hours meant I'd never find a guy. She said, and I remember the exact words because they stung so badly, "You look like you haven't slept in days, and honestly, no guy wants a workaholic hag who looks like she's aged 10 years in the past too." I went utterly silent for several weeks following that. I couldn't force myself to speak to her. It wasn't only us. She treated friends, extended family, and strangers with the same casual disrespect. Anyone other than Mom was fair game. Damon and I rightly harbored considerable hatred. We despised Nancy's brutality, but we despised Mom much more for allowing it. I recall having a particularly intense debate with Damon during which I stated that we despised her for it, referring to Mom's unflinching support for Nancy's behavior. I know it seems harsh, but it's the honest truth about how we felt. I believe Nancy's physical attractiveness contributed to her difficulty coping. She appeared conventionally attractive. I know it sounds petty to admit, but it is relevant. It is simpler to disregard insults from someone you consider equal, or even someone you regard as inferior to you. However, when someone who is commonly regarded as gorgeous tells you that you are not, it is taken more seriously. It plants the seed of doubt in your mind. I began to question my own appearance and worth. Looking back, with the advantage of hindsight and therapy, I believe Nancy's relentless urge to criticize others stemmed from her own deep-seated insecurity. She did not follow a traditional career path. She dabbled in freelance graphic design, but it was more of a pastime than a profession. She depended greatly on our parents, both financially and emotionally. Perhaps she belittled others to compensate for her own perceived flaws. Damon and I tried to disregard her words. Until we were 25, things changed radically. Our father died 8 years ago, and he was, in many ways, the glue that held our fragmented family together, despite his own role in the imbalance. He wasn't ideal. He certainly tolerated Nancy's behavior more than he should have. But he was the one who periodically attempted to mediate, to smooth things over, to keep some sort of order. His death devastated their fragile connection. After he left, Damon and I began to move apart from Mom and Nancy. It began slowly, with fewer phone calls and visits. We'd still see them at big family gatherings, the rare holiday, and maybe Christmas, but only on special occasions, if we felt like it. If we wanted to, we could make that phrase our motto. Then it became an intentional decision. We actively began avoiding them. A wall, as I've learned to call it, had formed between us and them. Honestly, I liked the wall. It provided a much-needed barrier, reducing exposure to Nancy's attacks and witnessing Mom's angry enabling. Initially, following Dad's illness and final death, we made real attempts to retain communication. We felt obligated, I think. But those attempts were really strained. Each phone contact and visit felt forced and unpleasant. During those brief contacts, Mom would almost always say or do something that reinforced our need for distance. She'd make some lovely remarks about Nancy's non-existent successes or discreetly critique our decisions, reminding us of why we were pulling away in the first place. One especially embarrassing Christmas meal, Mom spent the entire evening extolling Nancy's creative talent, displaying some very horrible drawings Nancy had allegedly done for a large client, who turned out to be a distant cousin. Meanwhile, she entirely overlooked Damon's recent promotion and my successful completion of a large assignment at work. It was a vivid reminder of the dynamic we were attempting to avoid. Damon and I eventually started making excuses, which became more complicated. We were overloaded with work. We had prior engagements. We were coming down with something, anything to avoid spending time with them. We understood that the emotional cost of those contacts far exceeded any felt familial obligation. Damon and I shared a tacit, unspoken agreement. We both acknowledged the dysfunction and implicitly agreed that distance was the best option. It wasn't that we didn't want to visit after Dad died, rather, we opted not to. It was not about insulting his memory. It was about safeguarding our own mental and emotional health. Crucially, Mom and Nancy made no meaningful effort to keep communication. They weren't continually phoning, pleading with us to come. The decision to drift away was mutual and unspoken. We were all financially stable, so there was no practical reason for frequent interaction. It was just easier to maintain different orbits. Silence was a relief. Damon suffered a serious accident a few years back and shattered his ankle. He was between jobs at the time and devoted all of his efforts and resources to the establishment of an online magazine. Money was scarce, and medical expenses were building up. As the CFO of a successful company, I volunteered to assist him in covering the bills. He originally refused, being the fiercely independent individual that he is, but I persisted. I didn't want him to spend his savings just as his magazine was ready to launch. I covered everything: his medication, the considerable physiotherapy he required, and even the cost of a full-time nurse to help him recuperate. To me, it was an obvious choice. It wasn't about the money. It was about supporting my brother, whom I actually cared about and wanted to succeed. It was an expression of sibling love and support. This gesture of charity, however, unintentionally established a hazardous precedent in the minds of Nancy and my mother. A few weeks later, Nancy called me and left me stunned. It was so bold and weird that I immediately assumed she was joking. She told me she wanted to acquire a penthouse apartment. Not just any apartment, but a penthouse, and she required my financial assistance. She defended her ridiculous request by claiming that she was embarrassed to still be living with her mother at the age of 28, and that since I had helped Damon, it was only fair that I also aid her. She carelessly forgot to disclose that she only had enough money to pay for half of the cost of this luxurious apartment. My instant reaction was a mix of disbelief and boiling rage. We rarely talked, and when we did, it was generally interrupted by Nancy's insults and hostility. And now, out of nowhere, she is asking for a large sum of money. It was surreal. We had not had a genuine, meaningful chat in years. The last time we spoke, she was busy criticizing my life choices, doubting my career, and making snarky remarks about my appearance. The audacity was amazing. I sought to understand her career, or lack thereof. She billed herself as a freelance graphic designer, although it was more of a casual pastime than a legitimate profession. She had no formal education, no degree, and no portfolio to speak of. She'd made a couple of posters for Dad's firm years ago, but they hadn't been utilized. She pretended to have a list of exclusive clients, but they were mostly family friends drawn in by Mom's constant push. It was certainly not a career that would allow me to afford a penthouse. So I gave a solid no. I told her straight out that I was not going to support her expensive lifestyle. I suggested, perhaps a little harshly, that she consider finding a real job if she wanted to purchase such pleasures. I know it wasn't the most polite response, but I was honestly taken aback by her entitlement. She took my refusal poorly, as one would expect. She went on a furious diatribe, accusing me of bias towards Damon. She screamed about how I had readily assisted him with his medical expenditures and how it was my responsibility as the eldest sibling to support her too. She entirely ignored the reality that Damon's predicament was an actual emergency, whereas hers was a self-induced craving for luxury. I tried to be calm, but my patience was getting thin. I reiterated my refusal, emphasizing that I was not a bank and was not obligated to pay her unreasonable goals. I was so disgusted by her entitlement and complete lack of self-awareness. It was as if she truly believed she deserved this penthouse simply because she was my sister. The talk quickly turned into a full-fledged dispute, with Nancy's voice reaching near hysterical levels. Finally, I said no one, and hung up the phone. I couldn't take another second of her screeching. She phoned back several times, but I ignored every call. I was finished. It was quite evident that our relationship, or whatever pretense of a relationship we had, was entirely transactional for her. She only contacted me when she wanted something, with no consideration for my sentiments or the years of awkward quiet between us. It was completely exhausting. Unsurprisingly, the drama did not end with Nancy's rage. My mother called me next, and the talk was much more aggravating. She began with a whining, passive-aggressive tone, complaining about how unfair I was to Nancy and accused me of playing favorites. She claimed I owed them anything because of my upbringing. Then she revealed an important detail. Nancy had approached our uncle, Dad's brother, who had taken over the family business, before coming to me. He had rightly turned down her plea. This exposed the extent of their desperation, and the fact that I was their second option further increased my rage. A little background: I purposely chose a career path outside of the family business. I did not want to be involved, neither did Damon. To be honest, Nancy didn't either, until it was convenient for her to pretend differently. After Dad died, his brother took over the company, and Mom lived comfortably on Dad's shares, which had been legally transferred to her as part of his will. Mom then admitted that their financial condition was fragile, owing to Nancy's lavish spending habits. She claimed that providing Nancy the money for the penthouse would make things easier for her in the future, implying that she wanted me to subsidize Nancy's lifestyle so she didn't have to. She then used the standard guilt trip, threatening no contact if I refused to comply with their requests. This was simply ludicrous, given that we were already in a position of very little interaction. I politely pointed out the contradiction, telling her that it wasn't my concern and that Nancy could get a job or stay with her until she was 35, for all I cared. My wrath, which had been building for years, suddenly erupted. I let loose a flood of pent-up rage. I told her she had no right to accuse me of favoritism because she had been doing it my entire life. I reminded her that Damon and I had made peace with her obvious preference years ago, when we accepted the truth of our broken family dynamic. I clearly explained that I owed them nothing, that I had my own life, obligations, and objectives. She responded with more ranting, accusing me of being ungrateful and disrespectful. She screamed that she never wanted to speak with me again. I chuckled. Because, really, what difference would it make? We scarcely spoke as things were. I mentioned my approaching wedding, emphasizing that I did not need her presence in my life. Then I hung off the phone and blocked her and Nancy on every platform possible. An important detail I didn't mention earlier: I should probably clarify that I am engaged to a beautiful, supportive man named Andrew, 37M. We've been together for nearly 5 years, and he's been quite understanding of the nuances of my familial situation. Initially, I considered bringing Mom and Nancy to the wedding solely out of obligation, a desire to keep some sort of family peace. But what happens following that explosive phone call? That thought went totally. However, the aftermath of the confrontation was not as simple as I had anticipated. Mom, unable to reach me directly, messaged Andrew via social media. She poured out her highly biased version of events, expressing her profound disappointment in me and announcing that she would permanently cut me off. Despite knowing I was right, I felt a little guilty. It's a bizarre, irrational feeling, that societal indoctrination that tells you that family is everything, regardless of how bad the connection is. Furthermore, Andrew first hesitated to grasp the situation properly. He is from a close-knit, caring, and supporting family. He had no idea that his mother and sister could be so cruel. He originally felt pity for Mom and Nancy, seeing them as the victimized parties. He couldn't fully realize the severity of the malfunction. This caused a temporary but major strain between us. I felt myself having to justify my conduct, explaining the situation's history once more. So, Reddit, AITA. I honestly don't believe I am, but I'm interested in hearing your thoughts. And thank you for reading this entire long narrative. Update 1. Fortunately, the encouragement I received online from strangers on Reddit who had read earlier sections of this story was quite affirming. Their remarks, shared experiences, and unflinching support all helped to alleviate those niggling doubts. They reminded me that I wasn't alone, that my emotions were genuine, and that I had every right to defend myself from toxic people, even if they were family members. Damon, as always, reiterated what the online trolls were saying. He reminded me of innumerable examples of Mom and Nancy's manipulative conduct, constant negativity, and complete lack of empathy. He acknowledged my feelings and assured me that I wasn't being unreasonable or overreacting. He, too, had been through it. He understood. A crucial turning point. The most significant turning point, however, was when Damon sat down with Andrew and described the problem from his perspective. He gave specific examples, went over the history of the family dynamic, and built a vivid picture of the emotional toll it had on both of us. Hearing it from Damon, who had seen the dysfunction personally, made all the difference. Andrew's opinion changed almost fast. He finally understood. He saw the problem for what it was. A toxic, extremely unhealthy familial dynamic that I needed to get away from. He apologized for his initial concerns, confessing that his own happy family experiences had blinded him to the reality of my circumstance. He even stated that his own parents would never behave in such a manner. From that point forward, Dad became my loyal supporter, totally backing my decision to cut ties with Mom and Nancy. Taking action, so we took action. We stopped them, Mr. Damon, Andrew, all of us, on all platforms. Update 2, just as I thought it was over? Just as I thought the drama was done, it took another unexpected turn. My uncle, Dad's brother, who had taken over the family business, contacted me and Damon about an urgent situation. He sounded quite anxious. Nearly frantic. He informed us that Mom was preparing to transfer a significant percentage of her company shares to Nancy. And not just any shares. She meant to offer Nancy voting shares, giving her enormous authority over the company. His reaction was quick. He thought it was a completely bad idea. A recipe for calamity. He understood, as we all did, that Nancy was completely incompetent in business. She had no experience. Complete lack of comprehension. She has absolutely no interest in anything other than her own superficial desires. Giving her vote rights in the corporation was, in his opinion, a terrible blunder that may destroy the entire operation. He stated that while Mom theoretically had voting authority, she had always deferred to his judgment. She had never interfered with the operation of the firm, trusting him to make wise decisions. He was really concerned that if Nancy took control, things would change. He saw continuous debates, power struggles, and potentially dangerous judgments motivated by Nancy's desires and Mom's blind favoritism. He plainly indicated that he did not want to be in ongoing disputes with them over every area of the firm. A difficult realization, Damon and I became instantly alarmed. We understood that the company's success was critical, not just for our uncle, but for the livelihoods of many people. We also experienced a sense of obligation. A lasting commitment to our father's legacy. So we arrived at a difficult decision. We couldn't just stand there and watch this unfold. We felt a moral obligation to intervene and try to avert what we perceived as an imminent calamity. We agreed to speak with our mother, despite our damaged relationship and the recent heated incident. We also felt a special obligation to our uncle, who had been so supportive and kind to us following Dad's death. He had, as I previously stated, watched out for us, and we couldn't in good conscience leave him to cope with this potential disaster on his own. We were concerned about the company's future, and we felt compelled to safeguard it, even if it meant confronting Mom and Nancy again. Update 3, the confrontation. We braced ourselves and went to see Mom, well expecting that Nancy would be there, and that her presence would make the conversation exponentially more difficult. We knew it would be unpleasant, but we believed it was necessary. As expected, Nancy was perched behind Mom like a deadly bird. We jumped right into the subject, expressing our strong objection to the plan to give Nancy voting shares. We labeled it an utterly ridiculous concept without holding back. Mom originally used a technique of stony silence, refusing to acknowledge our presence or worries. She completely ignored us as if we were not present in the room. Then she changed tactics, stating that we had no right to meddle in her decision and that she had no desire to engage with us. Nancy, predictably, screamed about how we were envious of her, how we had never taken the opportunity to be part of the family business, and how we were acting as if we owned the establishment. Her voice rose to a fever pitch, and her face distorted with wrath. It was an extremely unpleasant and stressful scene. I anxiously tried to argue with Mom, appealing to her sense of logic and accountability. I informed her, on several occasions, that Dad had expressly specified that he did not want any of his children involved in the day-to-day operations of the company. He had implicitly trusted his brother, our uncle, and wanted to prevent any future family squabbles or court battles. I highlighted that I had consciously selected a different career path based on Dad's intentions, out of respect for his vision. I begged her, virtually pleading with her, to reconsider her choice. To consider the probable repercussions. The harm she could cause, on the corporation, on our uncle, and on everyone who relied on the business for a living. Throughout my attempts at a calm discussion, Nancy continued to scream allegations of envy, hatred, and interference. She even threatened to call the police on us, as if we were trespassers. Intruders. In our mother's home. It was an insane display of entitlement and wrath. Nancy was probably afraid. She knew deep down that her financial security, her entire lifestyle, depended on Mom's continuing control over the corporation. She was terrified at the possibility of losing that stability and having to rely only on herself. Also, I believe Mom's silence during Nancy's outburst was purposeful, aimed to make me feel horrible, as if I was attacking her. Finally, after what seemed like an age, Mom quieted everyone. She told us, in a cold, dismissive tone, that we had been extremely disrespectful and offensive, and she instructed us to go. She stated she would consider what we had said and notify our uncle of her decision. Nancy, of course, remained at her side, Damon and I departed. We had done our best. We had made our point plainly and forcefully. We had appealed to Mom's sense of reason, to her devotion to Dad's wishes, to express her concern about the company's future. But we didn't know if it had made an impact. We hoped she'd reconsider, but we were ready for the worst. That night, I spoke with Andrew, describing the events. I assured him that even if things didn't go our way, at least we tried. Update 4. Surprising results. 2 painful weeks passed. Then, our uncle phoned us again with fantastic news. He informed us that, after great thought, Mom had decided not to give Nancy voting rights in the company. Instead, she planned to transfer preferred shares to her, which would give Nancy with a steady income but no control over the company's activities. It was a huge relief. Nancy's probable mismanagement did not pose a threat to the organization for the time being. Our uncle could continue to manage it successfully without the constant danger of interruption. Most significantly, Damon and I maintained no contact with Mom and Nancy. This was the ultimate victory. The entire scenario had been extremely distressing. It seemed weird to have to intervene in a situation that was officially not our immediate issue. However, we felt ethically bound to intervene. To defend our uncle. To respect our father's desires, and to secure the company's future. Edit. Addressing a key assumption. I should clarify something, to answer any potential questions or misconceptions. After reading earlier postings, some people concluded that Dad had abandoned us, his other children, with nothing. That is simply not true. He did leave us assets independent from the company's shares. I had not previously highlighted such assets because I did not believe they were directly related to the underlying dispute, which revolved around Nancy's entitlement and Mom's enabling behavior. To clarify, yes, we did inherit other things. Dad wasn't completely ignorant of Nancy's shortcomings. He was not, as I previously stated, in the same boat as my mother. He had a soft spot for her and indulged her more than he should have. I prefer not to focus on the bad features of his personality. I hope to remember him warmly. The essential issue is that we were never financially dependent on Mom or Nancy. We had our own resources. We have our own careers. We live our own lives. Update 5. The final fallout. So here we are, months later. The no contact order remains firmly in force, and it has been gloriously peaceful. My wedding is only a week away. The invites have long already been sent out. And, obviously, Mom and Nancy were not on the guest list. Our relatives, with whom we still communicate, have kept us up to date on the situation. Mom and Nancy appear to be in a complete meltdown. They found out about the wedding from our uncle, who was, of course, invited. They've been aggressively attempting to sabotage the event by contacting other family members, discouraging them from attending, spreading lies and distortions about me, and portraying themselves as innocent victims. It's pitiful, predictable, and completely unsurprising. A prime illustration of their deceitful, attention-seeking behavior. They cannot bear the thought of me being happy, of carrying on with my life without them. Breaking the cycle. My relationship with Andrew is diametrically opposed to the one I had growing up. He is loving, kind, supportive, honest. He taught me that family should not be conditional. Remember the harsh, cutting remarks Nancy used to fling at me? How could she predict I'd end up a jobless, lonely, workaholic hag? Well, the joke is on her. I am none of those things. I'm happy. I am successful. And I am going to marry the love of my life. And Damon, he is proving all of his critics wrong, including those who discounted his love of reading. I discovered my husband had cheated with my best friend while I was working overseas at a baby shower they hosted for their unborn child. I returned from my work trip earlier than scheduled. I didn't tell anyone I was returning. I wanted to surprise Miguel. When I arrived on our street, I noticed a few automobiles parked in front of our house. The garden was adorned with blue and pink balloons, and a banner proclaimed, "Welcome our little miracle." I parked my car a block away and walked over. The door was slightly open, and music and laughter could be heard from inside. When I walked in, I froze in the center of the living room. Carmen, my dearest friend, was clearly 6 months pregnant. My mother-in-law, Rosa, was softly massaging her belly as my mother poured drinks. Gifts were arranged on a beautiful table. "So, is the nursery ready?" my Aunt Elena said. "Almost," Carmen responded. Miguel insisted on painting it himself. He's been working on it every weekend. My spouse strolled in at that very moment, bearing more drinks. He approached Carmen and hugged her from behind, his hands resting on her stomach. "We just need to set up the crib," he told us. "We picked it out together last week." I watched as my mother stiffened when she saw me. She hurried over. "Anna, we weren't expecting you today," she said softly, taking my arm. "Let's go outside. We need to talk." I pushed free from her grip. "Talk about what?" I inquired. "About how my husband got my best friend pregnant while I was working in another country." The buzz in the room subsided. Carmen was the first to notice me. Her face became pallid. Miguel stood motionless, his hands resting on her tummy. "Anna," he started. "Don't you dare," I interrupted him. "How long have you been cheating on me?" No one responded. My father, standing in a corner, was unable to look me in the eye. "I can explain," Carmen replied, taking a step forward. "We didn't want you to find out like this." "Oh. And how were you planning to tell me? After the baby was born? Or when they turned 18? My mother-in-law stepped in. "Anna, please think about the baby. Carmen doesn't need this stress in her condition." "Her condition?" I asked, laughing dryly. "The same condition I was in 2 years ago when I lost my baby. Where was your concern then, Rosa?" The hush that ensued was deafening. My mom tried again. "Honey, I know this is difficult." "Difficult for whom?" I demanded. "For me, who worked nonstop for 9 months while my husband was sleeping with my best friend? Or for all of you, who had to keep up the charade?" Miguel eventually walked away from Carmen. "Anna, can we talk privately? Don't make a scene." "A scene?" I sneered. "No, Miguel. A scene would be telling everyone how you convinced me to take that overseas job. How you said we needed the money to start our family." I turned to face Carmen. "Did he tell you that? Or did he say he was lonely and abandoned while his cruel wife chased her career?" Carmen began crying. "It wasn't like that. We didn't plan this." "Of course not," I replied mockingly. "I suppose you just tripped and fell pregnant by my husband? These things happen, right?" The visitors started shifting uncomfortably. Some grabbed their bags and prepared to go. My father has finally spoken up. "Anna, calm down. You're upset." "Upset?" I laughed bitterly. "No, Dad, I'm perfectly calm. In fact, I'm grateful." My mother frowned, puzzled. "Grateful?" she repeated. "Yes," I said, my voice steady. "Because now I see everyone for who they really are. My husband, the liar. My best friend, the traitor. And my family, the cowards who chose to protect this lie instead of me." I strolled over to the present stand and chose one at random. "This one's yours, Mom," I said, holding it up. "You bought a nice gift for your son-in-law's mistress's baby." "Anna, please," my mother begged. I ripped the package paper open. The baby's attire was white with blue embellishments. "How thoughtful," I replied, my voice full with sarcasm. "I hope you kept the receipt." Miguel moved closer, attempting to take the gift from my hands. "Enough, Anna, you're making a fool of yourself." "Making a fool of myself?" I snorted. "No, Miguel, you did that all on your own, getting my best friend pregnant while I was paying all the bills." My mother-in-law stood up in indignation. "This is too much," she exclaimed. "Miguel was just looking for the happiness you couldn't give him. Always busy, always working." "You're right, Rosa," I responded coldly. "I was too busy working. Working to pay the mortgage on the house where your son was sleeping with my best friend." I gazed around the room. Every familiar face suddenly resembled that of a stranger. "You know what?" I said. "You can keep the house, the furniture, the gifts. But, Miguel, I suggest you get a good job because you won't have access to my money anymore." Miguel's cheeks turned pale. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about how, while I was overseas, I wasn't just working, I was also consulting a lawyer. I have proof of every penny I spent on this house, on you, on our marriage." I turned and went out of the house, not looking back. My hands were trembling, my breathing was uneven, but I refused to give up in front of them. They did not deserve to see my tears. I went away, ignoring the curious eyes of the neighbors, who had most likely heard everything that had happened. I got in my car and slammed the door shut. My fingers grew white from the tight hold I had on the steering wheel. My vision had dimmed, but I refused to cry. I started the engine and drove away from that nightmare, with no destination or direction. My phone was full of messages. I missed calls from my mother. Miguel sent text messages. Even Carmen. "Please, Anna, we need to talk. This wasn't supposed to happen this way. You don't understand the whole situation." "Oh, I understand." I really understood. I realized that while I was working to support my home, family, and marriage, they were all together. Every time Miguel called and said he missed me, I knew he was telling a lie. I realized that whenever Carmen stated she was busy and couldn't talk, it was because she was busy with him. A nasty taste entered my mouth. Disgust. I'm disgusted with myself for not noticing it sooner. After driving for a time, I turned into the parking lot of an unrelated hotel. I needed someplace to breathe. I wasn't returning to that house. That house now served as a monument to my humiliation. I headed to the front desk and reserved a room for a few days. The receptionist gave me an odd look, possibly due to my untidy appearance, but handed me the key without asking any questions. When I entered the room, I shut the door and collapsed on the bed. Only then did the weight of everything overwhelm me. I curled up and hugged myself, letting the tears flow, tears of fury, disdain, and a deep, stifling agony that constricted my chest. But I couldn't do this forever. I needed to do something. The next morning, I went directly to my lawyer's office. He was already aware of my condition and had all of the essential documentation prepared to guarantee that I get out of this problem with as little damage as possible. I want to start the process today, I stated firmly. Divorce, property division, everything. And I want it to be clear that Miguel won't see a single cent of my money. He nodded. You have more than enough evidence to contest any claim he might make. The house is in your name, all the expenses were covered by you, he has no rights to anything. I took a deep breath. Good. Then let him find out the hard way. I walked out of the office with an unusual sensation of relief. For the first time in a long time, I felt in charge of my own life. My phone vibrated. Miguel. I ignored it. Minutes later, a message appeared. We need to talk, please, Anna. I merely said, talk to my lawyer. Days passed, and the calls and messages continued. Until one afternoon, while I was drinking coffee at a cafe near the hotel, someone approached my table. Miguel. He looked terrible, deep eye bags, unkempt hair, but I had no pity. Anna, please. He sat across from me without being asked. I didn't want you to find out like that. I crossed my arms. Oh? But how did you want me to find out? With an invitation to the baby shower? He ran his palm over his face, tired. This isn't how I wanted things to happen. I made a mistake. A mistake? I scoffed. Getting my best friend pregnant was not a mistake, Miguel. It was a choice. You decided to sleep with her. You decided to lie to me. You opted to have everyone cover for you. He lowers his head. I was lonely, Anna. You were never here. You were always traveling, always busy with work. I gave out a sour laugh. And why was I busy, Miguel? Because I was the one paying for our damn house while you sat at home doing nothing. He said nothing. You want to know the most ironic part? I asked. I took that position because I believed we were creating something together, and I made sacrifices thinking it was for the greater good. But while I was straining myself to exhaustion, you were ripping off my dearest friend. He gazed at me with desperation. I know I messed up, Anna, but can't we fix this another way? I leaned forward and looked right into his eyes. We're correcting it. My lawyer has already filed for divorce. You will not receive a penny from me. And as for that child, I hope you are a decent father, because I want you out of my life. Anna, please. It's over, Miguel. I stood up and went away, not looking back. The news quickly spread. My true friends, those who had not deceived me, stood by my side. And my family? Oh, they attempted to contact out. My mother contacted me several times and tried to justify everything. We didn't want to hurt you, sweetheart, it was complicated for all of us. You need to forgive. Forgive? I moved on. I eventually rebuilt my life. I left the motel and got a new apartment. I concentrated on my profession and future. And Miguel? He quickly learned that life was not as easy without the comfort I had supplied. A few weeks later, I got another note. Can we talk? I miss you. I smiled and deleted the message without responding, and for the first time in a long time, I felt liberated. When I finally received word that Miguel had been legally served with the divorce papers, I knew his real misery had only begun. He attempted to reach me in every manner possible. He called me dozens of times each day. I've sent an unending number of messages. He even showed up at places I frequented. But I did not respond. I did not give him a chance. I refused to allow him to control me. One night, when I was returning to my apartment, I noticed my mother standing outside. Anna, we need to talk. I rolled my eyes. I already knew what it was about. We have nothing to talk about. Miguel is desperate. You're taking everything from him, she exclaimed, as if I were the antagonist in this scenario. I crossed my arms. Oh, now he's the victim? Honey, he made a mistake, but that doesn't mean you should ruin his life, my mom replied. I laughed without humor. He ruined my life, Mom. He cheated on me, got my best friend pregnant, and all of you covered for them. And now you have the nerve to tell me that I'm being cruel. She groaned and reached for my hand, but I pulled away. What you're doing to him? This isn't right, Anna. Anger flared in my chest. Oh, you want to talk about what's right? I snapped at you. Was it right for me to pay the mortgage alone while he was screwing my best friend? Was it right that I worked my ass off while he played the perfect husband? Now, he gets to deal with the consequences. She looked at me as though I were a monster. He has nowhere to go, she muttered. I shrugged. Not my problem. She shook her head, disbelieving. I didn't raise you to be this way, Anna. And I didn't expect my own mother to take the side of a cheating bastard. I turned around and walked into my building, not looking back. Days passed, and Miguel's plight only worsened. Since I had paid for everything, he was now drowning in bills. The mortgage payments were past due, and without my money, he swiftly fell into financial despair. Then came the eviction. I knew it was coming when I got confirmation that he hadn't made any payments. And I made it a point to personally see the moment he was forced to leave my house. When I arrived, the place was in disarray. Boxes were spread over the front yard. Miguel was disputing with the eviction officer. Carmen stood behind him, gripping her pregnant tummy with a terrified gaze. Anna, he said when he spotted me. You can't do this to me. I crossed my arms, feeling a dark sensation of contentment grow within me. I can, and I did. This isn't fair. I lived in this house. No, I replied coldly. I paid for this house. You were just a parasite living in it. His face flushed red with frustration. Where the hell do you expect me to go? I shrugged. Not my problem. Carmen gazed at me with desperation in her eyes. Anna, please, please. She had the audacity to look me in the eyes and say please. I took a step towards her. Oh, so now you can say my name? Before it was just, I hope she never finds out, wasn't it? She lowers her head. It wasn't supposed to be like this. But it is. And now, you and Miguel have to deal with it. Miguel rubbed his hands across his face, appearing weary. You don't have a heart, he mumbled. I tilted my head. Funny, because you sure loved that heart when it was paying all your bills. He opened his mouth to argue, but then closed it again when the officer approached. Time's up. You need to vacate the property now. Miguel's expression changed to one of utter terror. He looked around and realized he was out of options. He grabbed a box and banged it on the ground. You just want to see me destroyed, don't you? I leaned in closer, meeting his stare without pity. Yes. He clenched his jaw and marched out, Carmen trailing behind him. I stood there, watching him leave, broken, homeless, and powerless. Over the next few days, my entire family turned against me. My aunts called me. My mother arrived at my apartment again. Even my father, who normally remained out of things, attempted to intercede. Anna, he's sleeping on your mother-in-law's couch. Don't you think this has gone too far? No, Dad, I don't. Carmen is pregnant, they have nothing? Great, I remarked, my voice full of sarcasm. Then Miguel can finally do what he should have done a long time ago. Get a job. My mother threw up her hands, exasperated. You're obsessed with revenge. And you're obsessed with protecting a cheater. They couldn't change my mind. And Miguel? Oh, Miguel was in ruins. There is no home. There's no comfort. He no longer had access to the money he had been stealing from me for years. I heard from some mutual friends that he had started working odd jobs to make ends meet, but it wasn't enough. And then the unavoidable occurred. Miguel walked up to my apartment. He appeared unhappy, thinner, with black circles beneath his eyes. Anna, please, I have nothing left, he said. I stared at him. I know I need help. I inclined my head and pretended to think. Like I needed help when I found out you were cheating on me? He closed his eyes, annoyed. I was an idiot. I know that. But I can't change the past. I crossed my arms. No, but you sure as hell can suffer in the present. His palms tightened into fists as he swallowed his pride. You don't have to be this cruel. Oh, but I do, I replied, my tone mocking. I learned from the best. With that, I slammed the door in his face. For the first time in years, I felt peaceful. Miguel was now discovering what life was like without me. And me? I was finally free. Miguel sunk deeper, exactly as I predicted. There is no home, no money. There's no comfort. He had transformed from a privileged, dependent husband to a desperate man who hopped from job to job simply to stay afloat. And me? I moved on. I did not feel sorry for him. In fact, every time I heard of another calamity in his life, I felt a strange kind of joy. It was a great taste of justice to know that all he had done to me would come back to haunt him. And then I got the finest news I'd had in months. Carmen has filed for divorce. I discovered it from an acquaintance, one of the few people who still dared to speak with me after everything had transpired. She ran into me in a cafe, paused for a bit, and smiled slightly before dropping the bombshell. She left him. I blinked. What? Carmen. She filed for divorce. And she wants alimony. I couldn't stop myself from laughing, and it was a big, true laugh from the core. Are you serious? I said, still chuckling. Dead serious. Miguel can't hold a stable job, and she doesn't want to be the one supporting him. Oh, the irony was great. Carmen had swore Miguel was her genuine love. I worked hard to support him, but he clung to me like a parasite. I had now done the same thing to him as he had to me. I left him when he was no longer useful. And she wants alimony? I inquired, still beaming. Yeah. She claims he promised to take care of her, and now that she has a baby, she needs financial support. I couldn't stop laughing. Please tell me, I responded, chuckling. Does Miguel even have money to pay her? My acquaintance smirked. No. I lost it. Miguel hadn't simply lost everything I'd given him, now, even the lady he betrayed me for was financially ruining him. Karma had come for him. And this time, he had no one left to leech from. I had to see it. The following week, I made an unintentional appearance at a location I knew Miguel still frequented, a dingy bar where we used to hang out. One of the few places he could still afford. He was sitting at the counter, resembling a ghost of his old self. Thinner. Dark rings appeared under his eyes. His beard is untidy. Of course, he was holding a cheap beer. I strolled in gently and took my time, then sat 2 seats away. He quickly noticed me. His expression hardened. What do you want? He asked quietly, his voice raspy and exhausted. Nothing, I replied, picking up my own drink. Just enjoying the view. He breathed deeply. Are you happy now? I sipped, enjoying the moment. Yes, very. He scoffed and shook his head. You think this is funny? Miguel, I find this hilarious. You abandoned our marriage for Carmen, and look where you are today. She left you and took what little you had left. He ran a hand over his face, obviously fatigued. You don't understand. Oh, I understand completely. Tell me how your great love fell apart so swiftly. He remained silent for a long time before glancing at his empty glass. She said she couldn't be with someone who had nothing to offer. I grinned. Funny, right? That's exactly what you said about me. He closed his eyes, his jaw stiffening. You don't get it, Anna. Oh, I do. You were only suitable for her when it was convenient. Now that you can't provide the comfortable life she desired, she threw you away like junk. He did not argue, because he could not. I rose up, prepared to depart. You know what's the best part? I asked, staring down at him. You deserve every bit of this. And I walked away, leaving Miguel to drown in his own despair. Following that day, I cut off all ties to my past. I alienated myself from my family. The hypocritical aunts who often told me to forgive. My mother insisted that I had gone too far. I owed nothing to any of them. I only owed myself. So I started afresh. I completely reconstructed my life. I bought a new apartment exclusively for myself. I sold everything that reminded me of that miserable period in my life. I donated some items. Others were burned. Miguel and Carmen were eliminated. I went out more. I met new folks. I enjoyed life without carrying dead weight on my back. For the first time in years, I had control over my life. And as I moved forward, Miguel kept falling apart. Months later, I learned that he had attempted to appeal the divorce decision, arguing that he deserved alimony instead. Of course, the judge laughed at him and refused everything. I also discovered that Carmen continued to drain what little money he had left. And me, I have never felt better. The world was finally as it should be. I was free. And Miguel was receiving just what he deserved. My half-sister destroyed my marriage, stole the life I once had, and now she wants me to officiate her wedding, but I had a plan for revenge. My husband Jerry, 52 male, and I, 48 female, had been together for about 12 years and married for 10. We were so joyful at the beginning, you know? Every moment we spent together was a source of delight, filled our days with laughter, dreams, And the little things that made us love each other even more. We were a team, tackling life together. Our smiles were contagious, and everything seemed a little better when we were together. We soaked up the love we had, from cozy Sundays to odd date nights that just made everything feel great. Life was simple and we enjoyed every moment of it. But suddenly, things began to shift. Date nights became stressful, and the casual laughter was no longer as loud as it always was. I started noticing that he was spending more and more time on his phone than with me. Date nights were no longer lighthearted. There was a palpable strain in the air. Our happiness had begun to fade, and I couldn't escape the feeling that our relationship was slipping away from me. The intimacy we previously shared was fading, replaced by a growing distance that seemed difficult to repair. I began to suspect Jerry might be having an affair. Late-night phone calls and odd messages became too common for me to dismiss. I questioned his behavior changes, as well as the fact that he felt distant even when we were only inches apart. But Jerry ignored it, claiming that I was reading too much into his conduct and that he was simply preoccupied at work. In my gut, I knew it wasn't just paranoia. It was a feeling that our marriage was taking an unforeseen turn. On a Friday evening, I planned to surprise Jerry with a dinner date, hoping to revive our relationship. I eagerly went to his office to pick him up, anticipating a night of connection and joy. However, my elation quickly changed to regret when he sent me a message saying he would be working late owing to an onerous workload. I sighed, accepting the change in plans without letting him know I was waiting for him below. I was about to depart when I noticed Jerry exiting his employment, which surprised me. This confused me because it contradicted his message about a difficult workload. Puzzled, I watched him get into his car and drive away. I decided to follow him instinctively, with curiosity in my heart. Little did I know that what I was about to witness would rock me to my core. I followed him as he pulled into a pub. I wasn't sure what he was doing there. Why did he lie to me about this? As I quietly studied him at the bar, my greatest suspicions were clear. He was meeting a woman. I remained there, stunned, as the woman's back appeared familiar to me. The mystery woman then moved to sit in front of him, and my eyes widened in surprise as I realized it was my stepsister Karen. I could feel my legs giving out from shock, and I nearly fainted in front of the bar. While spying on them, I noticed my husband and Karen holding hands and smiling lovingly at one another. The understanding hit me like a gut punch, and I had an intense want to vomit. The overwhelming contempt, along with the betrayal, left me with a range of feelings, wondering how to respond to the extent of his deception. I recall leaving the bar in a trance, hoping Jerry wouldn't catch me. That night was the most difficult one of my life. I don't think I've sobbed this much since my dog died last year. It was terrible to realize that the person I intended to spend the rest of my life with was cheating on me with my own stepsister. For some perspective on my stepsister, my parents divorced when I was very young, and my mother married her new husband Harry. Harry had a daughter from his previous marriage, Karen. Karen and I hit it off right away, despite our 4-year age difference. However, our relationship began to deteriorate as I became aware of her ability to manipulate others. She showed to be a master of deception, easily manipulating any circumstance to her benefit. Karen's manipulative abilities were unrivaled, whether it was lying to our parents to evade punishments or misleading total strangers without thinking twice. Karen was constantly jealous of me, despite the fact that we both came from shattered homes. No matter how hard I tried, she never liked me. As we grew older and eventually went to college, I saw less of her. I received a full-ride scholarship and enjoyed my college years, making new friends, trying new classes, and relishing the freedom of youth. I started coming home less and less, and eventually stopped talking to Karen except at family gatherings. Even though I kept my distance from Karen, she continued to be mean to me over the years. She would make subtle but nasty remarks about my appearance whenever we were alone at family gatherings. Whether it was a criticism about my wardrobe or a sneaky suggestion about how I should go to the gym more regularly, her words were always intended to undermine my confidence. I always tried to disregard these comments as much as possible. Karen didn't stop there. She would frequently be overly nice with my husband, who was then my boyfriend. She would make comments to him about how he deserved someone more attractive or how amazing his gym images were. Jerry used to look visibly embarrassed and flush when she complimented him. I always assumed it was just Karen being Karen. She was always inappropriate with everyone I dated and introduced to my family. Since my marriage to Jerry, she had toned down her flirty behavior, and I never gave it any attention. But after seeing them together tonight in the pub, I was convinced that this had been going on for a while. They appeared to be comfy and familiar with one another. When Jerry came back that night, I pretended to be asleep. He reeked of liquor and sweat and didn't even try to hide it. His arrogant demeanor hinted at his growing arrogance. He had begun to believe that he could just get away with anything like this. I lay awake all night, worrying about my next steps. Before Jerry awoke, I discreetly removed his phone from our bedroom to check through it. Checking his messages, calls, emails, and images, I meticulously documented proof by taking shots using my own phone. That morning, after Jerry had left for work, I decided to drive to my mother's house because I felt she was the only person who could console me. My stepfather was at work, so I felt I could speak with my mother in private. When I told my mother about my husband's romance with my stepsister, she was as startled as I was. She almost didn't believe me until I presented all the proof. She was outraged that Jerry and Karen could perform such a heinous act. My mother, being the rock she is, instantly planned to confront them in front of everyone. I could understand how upset she was since she had always treated Karen as if she were her own daughter when we were younger. We couldn't comprehend how my own stepsister could stab me in the back like this. We devised a plan to invite our close family members to supper at my place over the weekend. My mother advised me to keep my lips shut and not tell Jerry about it. Everyone arrived at the gathering looking refreshed and pleased. We all ate supper together, and while people drank wine, I looked at my mother and nodded, signifying that it was time. She understood and stood up to retrieve the projector. I clinked my glass to grab everyone's attention. "Thank you all for joining us tonight," I began, my voice firm despite the tempest of emotions within me. "I've called you all here for a special reason, something I've been struggling with for a long time. I want you to pay attention to the projector because I have a surprise for you." Curiosity filled the room as my family and friends focused their attention on the projection screen. My mother had set up the gadget, and I took a deep breath, preparing to reveal the awful truth. I connected it to my phone and started scrolling through the photographs and messages I'd saved from my husband's phone. The room fell silent as everyone focused on the television. The first image appeared, showing Jerry and Karen in an intimate stance. Gasps and murmurs echoed around the room. Everyone glanced at it, bewildered. "This is not easy for me, but I felt you all needed to know the truth," I said, my voice steady. "These pictures and messages are evidence of an affair between my husband, Jerry, and my stepsister Karen." The room erupted with amazement, indignation, and shock. As they witnessed the evidence, their eyes widened and their jaws dropped. My mother's expression was a mix of rage and sorrow, and I could feel the tension rising. She stood beside me, holding my hand, silently reassuring me that she had my back. I continued scrolling through the devastating letters, revealing the extent of the betrayal. As I divulged more, everyone's shock morphed into palpable fury. I turned to face Jerry and Karen, who were sitting in startled silence. Jerry's face flushed with guilt, while Karen, formerly manipulative and shrewd, appeared little and vulnerable. The room appeared to vibrate with the combined wrath of those present. My mother stepped forward, her voice stern and full of disappointment. "How could you do this to our family? To your spouse? Your sister?" she demanded, her gaze fixed on Jerry and Karen. My stepfather looked directly at Karen and asked whether what I had revealed was accurate. Karen fell into tears, unwilling to confront him. The weight of his remarks appeared to crush her. Other family members expressed their own disbelief and fury. Some people exchanged looks and shook their heads, while others murmured harsh remarks to one another. Jerry and Karen sat there, unable to justify their actions in the face of incriminating evidence and furious emotions. The room pulsated with the weight of the truth, and my heart, though heavy, felt strangely relieved. The secret was out, and the lie was exposed for all to see. I spoke up again, addressing the audience. "I didn't come to you all here simply to expose them. I also wanted to let you know that I'm divorcing Jerry. If Karen wants my husband, she may have him. I appreciate everyone's compassion and support during this tough time." As the shock evolved to solidarity, the entire room rallied in my favor. Friends and family sent words of consolation and condemnation to Jerry and Karen. Jerry's face turned scarlet, and he walked away humiliated. Karen followed him, evidently looking for an excuse to get out of the situation. My mother held me, and I started crying. I had kept this agony hidden inside me all along, and suddenly it was coming out. In the months after this tragedy, I found myself emotionally exhausted, unable to muster the strength to get out of bed. The weight of the betrayal, along with the tiredness of innumerable tears, had left me feeling like a hollow shell of myself. Sleep had become both a haven and an escape from my harsh life. I kicked Jerry out of our house while we worked through our divorce. It was a long and difficult path, but I knew I wanted to get divorced from him as soon as possible. 2 days ago, following months of legal proceedings, the court granted us our wish. We were formally separated. I was overjoyed and spent the day with my mother, shopping and eating ice cream. For the first time in years, I felt liberated and free. That evening, when we were seated and watching a movie at my mother's house, My stepfather entered the room, looking upset. My mother asked him what was wrong, but he looked at me with worry. I sat up straight and asked him what had occurred. He asked if I had seen Karen's recent Facebook post. I shook my head and promptly unlocked my phone, looking for her profile. With bated breath, I went on her profile to see her most recent picture with Jerry. They were smiling and looked at each other with love. She captioned it, "So happy to be engaged." As I read the caption, my breath came to a stop. Then I realized, she was wearing a ring. I was very stunned to say the least. My mother, who was staring at me curiously, seized the phone from my grasp and cried out in surprise, understanding that Karen was truly marrying Jerry. I can't recall what transpired the rest of the night. Overwhelmed by shock and amazement, I sunk back into the couch, my mind whirling with a barrage of emotions. The room seemed to press in on me as I wrestled with the truth of the situation. My mother, who was similarly astonished, attempted to console me, but words failed us both. As if things weren't awful enough, my stepfather received a call from Karen. She was presumably calling to tell him about the news. I asked him to put her on speaker so I could hear what she had to say. My stepfather nodded and took up the phone. He calmly listened as Karen raved about her engagement and how excited she was to marry Jerry. I listened to her words, devastated and absolutely empty inside. My stepdad then furiously interrupted her. "Karen, what you did today is not only disrespectful and hurtful to your stepsister, but it will have far-reaching consequences for the entire family." Karen answered, apparently upset by his reaction. "I don't understand, Dad. Jerry and I are in love and we're getting married. What's wrong with celebrating that?" My stepdad chided me. "What's wrong, Karen, is the way you've gone about it. You had an affair and you think that's okay? Your actions have caused immense pain to someone you should consider family. Instead of being respectful and understanding, you are now flaunting your engagement in front of her and the rest of us without a thought for the consequences." Hearing his remarks, I burst into tears while my mother consoled me. I suppose this is when Karen learned my stepfather wasn't alone. She asked if I was in the room, and he confirmed. Karen then began pleading with me for a conversation. My stepfather glanced at me curiously, so I took the phone from him. I started asking her whether she realized what she was getting herself into. Karen smirked when she heard my voice and informed me she knew what she was getting into. She went on to suggest that I shouldn't be sobbing about Jerry because we were officially split and he was now free to marry her. As if that wasn't enough, Karen dropped another bombshell. Jerry and she wanted me to attend their wedding and bless them on their new path. Hearing her remarks, I felt a mixture of shock, rage, and incredulity. They wanted me to present a mask of acceptance, togetherness, and happiness when, in truth, I was dealing with the shattered shards of my own heart. The entire event felt like a sick joke on me. She began discussing how much it would mean to them if I could give a speech on their big day, indicating to everyone that I was fine with their wedding. I was stunned and at a loss for words. Without hesitation, my mother grabbed the phone from my grasp and addressed Karen directly. She stated unequivocally that Karen's actions were abhorrent and represented a new low. Karen responded angrily, stating that she and Jerry were in love and demanding that the family accept their relationship. I left my parents to deal with Karen and went to the guest bedroom, where I closed myself in and cried. I don't recall anything from the night. The next morning, I awoke angry and determined. Karen's audacious deeds kindled a fire within me. Instead than letting this knowledge devastate me, I resolved to turn the tables. I knew I had to tackle it head on and come out stronger. I wasn't going to let them take away my happiness and mental tranquility. I had a plan in my head and was determined to make Karen regret inviting me. I opened my laptop and began browsing her social media pages. I went through every social media picture she'd ever uploaded. As luck would have it, I eventually located what I was looking for. I convened a family meeting and described my intentions. I would go to Karen and Jerry's engagement party, but not alone. I would be inviting a very important guest to be my +1, unbeknownst to Jerry and Karen. My mother glanced at me curiously as I mentioned that I would be accompanying her ex-boyfriend from college, Ron. Ron was apparently my stepsister's great love, and she even had a tattoo of his name from when they were dating. They had a painful breakup, and I knew she would be shocked to find me arm in arm with her ex. My mother's eyes widened with recognition. I gave her a cheeky look. She gave me a gentle nod of assent, indicating that she understood my plan. My stepfather, on the other hand, believed this was going too far and warned me not to ruin my stepsister's wedding. So, Reddit, do you think I'm an a-hole for inviting my stepsister's ex to her wedding after she opted to sleep with and marry my husband? Update 1. It's been a few days since I last posted an update to my narrative. Thank you for your comments. I'm astonished how many of you understand and encourage my petty behavior. I'll confess that I wanted to be the bigger person at first, but seeing Karen update more and more of her engagement photos with Jerry officially reinforced my plan, and I set it in motion. I sent Ron a friend request on Facebook and messaged him once he accepted. To my amazement, he replied, and we began communicating. I was open with him about my identification as Karen's stepsister and her soon-to-be husband's ex. I informed him of my intention to invite him as my +1 to their wedding. He appeared surprised and curious about why I was contacting him, but I explained everything. I informed him that Karen had cheated on me with my own husband and was now marrying him. I told him I wanted to take him with me so I could make Karen feel the same way she did for me. After hearing everything, Ron agreed to accompany me. I get aroused thinking about the expressions on Jerry and Karen's faces when they see me at their wedding with Ron. My stepfather has no idea I'm going to take Ron. After our recent chat, in which he discouraged me from bringing him as my +1 to Karen's wedding, I've decided to keep this knowledge private for the time being. I will notify you when the wedding takes place in a few days. Update 2, it's been a month since I last updated. As much as I wanted to update you earlier, a lot has happened in my life, and I needed some time to calm down. As I previously stated, I did take Ron with me to the wedding. When their wedding day arrived, I put on a brave face. I strolled into their wedding in Ron's arms, dressed with confidence. Jerry's eyes widened as he noticed me going in with my special guest. He must have identified Ron as Karen's ex right away. We disregarded his face and pretended to locate our assigned seats. Jerry approached me and aggressively said, "Why are you there with Karen's ex?" But I just grinned. He couldn't make a scene in front of everyone and had to reluctantly walk back up the aisle, angrily staring at me. When it was time for the bride to enter, everyone stood up from their chairs. Karen, dressed in her wedding gown, entered with my stepfather. She recognized me among the guests and smiled triumphantly. I replied with a smirk, refusing to show her my vulnerability. Then she saw Ron standing next to me and stopped dead in her tracks. The music continued, and my stepfather begged her to keep walking, but Karen refused. Her gaze moved between me and him, possibly still perplexed. I held my head high and maintained a calm posture. When my stepfather observed Karen staring at me, he looked up at both me and Ron and must have realized what was going on. The air in the room swelled with tension, and I could feel the guests' collective curiosity growing. Karen surged toward me and came to a halt in front of us, her face distorted with a combustible combination of rage and disbelief. "Congratulations, Karen," I answered calmly. "I'm genuinely happy for you both." "What the hell is this?" she said, her voice angry. I met her gaze with an unwavering stare. "This, Karen, is my +1, I said with a hint of delight in my voice. "Meet Ron. You remember him, right? From your college days? Or should I mention the tattoo on your hand?" I continued, loving her stunned expression. Ron moved forward, his countenance unreadable. "Hey, Karen, it's good to see you after so many years. We thought we'd share in the joy of your special day," he stated calmly, refusing to be drawn into a confrontation. Karen's cheeks was flushed with wrath. "Joy? You call this joy? You're ruining everything," she exclaimed, her voice breaking through the din of the crowd. The room was stunned into silence. Guests glanced at Karen, their expressions reflecting the horror that filled the air. Whispers and whispers rippled around the room, as individuals exchanged incredulous looks. Keeping my cool, I replied, "Well, Karen, it was you who graciously invited me to your wedding with Jerry, so I thought I'd return the favor and bring along your ex, Ron." The room was alive with murmurs and gasps as the visitors assessed the developing drama. Karen's eyes furrowed at me, and she appeared surprised. It was evident she had not expected such a forceful response. Ron, keeping his calm manner, added, "Karen, we're here to celebrate your happiness. There's no need to make this a scene." Karen scoffed. "Celebrate my happiness? How can you even be with someone like her? Are you dating her now?" I smiled at her scorn and, shrugging nonchalantly, responded, "Like I said, you invited me. I'm just here to honor that invitation and wish you and Jerry a lifetime of joy together. What happens between Ron and me should not be your concern, especially since you're about to marry." Karen's rage heightened the tension in the room. Jerry, who was standing at the altar, came running down, pleading with Karen not to cause a commotion so that they could continue their celebration. Karen pulled him away fiercely. Then, out of wrath, she threw her bouquet across the room. The bouquet flew into the air, leaving a trail of petals in its wake before smashing to the ground. Despite the collective gasps, Karen walked out of the theater, her gown trailing behind her in a whirl of white. The door slammed shut behind her, leaving a sensation of astonishment in its wake. The visitors exchanged perplexed looks, unsure how to respond to the unexpected turn of events. Some people made awkward smiles, while others shifted uneasily in their seats. The mood, which had once been festive, was now tense and confusing. Jerry looked at me angrily and opened his mouth to yell, but my mother urged him to shut up after what he had the audacity to put me through. With a smirk, I told Ron that we should depart, and he nodded in accord. The audience erupted in a maelstrom of reactions, including disbelief, indignation, and whispered conversations. I left the venue with my head held high. The weight of betrayal was removed. The world had witnessed my anguish, resilience, and ability to rise above the ashes of a failed marriage. I don't care if people think I went too far because I've never slept with someone behind their back or ended a marriage. I only gave my stepsister a taste of her own medication. Update 3: I am astounded by everyone's response in just a few days since my previous update. I'm delighted to see that the majority of you understand why I did what I did, and I can appreciate some of your unfavorable emotions. Honestly, I have no regrets about what I did. My stepfather informed me that Jerry and Karen had formally ended their relationship. She refused to marry, no matter how hard Jerry begged with her. I'm guessing this suggests she still has feelings for Ron, and seeing him that day must have reminded her of them. I'm not one to take pleasure in the agony of others, but sometimes the only lessons individuals may learn are the repercussions. Jerry has sent me numerous angry missed calls and messages, but I have chosen to block him. My stepfather chastised me for what I did during my stepsister's wedding, and out of respect, I didn't argue with him much. My mother asked me to give him some time and space, and I agreed. In the aftermath, I've decided to focus on rebuilding my life and discovering happiness within myself. As I deal with the uncertainties of life, I will undoubtedly seek therapy, as everyone has suggested. For the time being, I want to focus on my personal development, finding my passions, and only exposing myself to positive influences.